Chapter 375 Abandoned Haunted House. After leaving Jixing Hall, Heshi never stopped advancing towards the other courtyard in Yanjing City's eastern outskirts. Inside Yanjing City, you couldn't fly with your sword, so Heshi exhausted her qinggong. At Sushi 1, Heshi was able to see the area 3 li north of the eastern outskirts. A small, unremarkable hill sat here. An official road led up to the eastern side of this hill, but because it was nighttime, people on the road had long since been scarce. On the west side of the hill, there was a house that seemed to be particularly gloomy and shabby. From far away, in the dark night, one could only see a yellow piece of paper that was stuck to black painted doors. The piece of paper fluttered about in the wind whenever it blew. There weren't any decorations at the door, nor was there a plaque. Even the eaves were sunken in, exposing a fist-sized hole. The whole house seemed to have merged into one with the surrounding night. Just by looking at it would cause someone to feel a type of gloomy cold. If an ordinary person were to be walking along this official road and happened across this residence, they would definitely think this was an abandoned haunted house. They wouldn't have any interest in checking this house out. The white moon brocade robe Heshi was wearing had already been changed into agile black clothes. She didn't use any spiritual energy, just her qinggong to jump over the wall. All her actions were soundless, even the bats hanging on the eaves weren't disturbed by her presence. Using the map Heshi took from shopkeeper Qin, Heshi quickly made her way through the house. And along this road, Heshi saw many martial artists hidden inside the house. At the very least, they were at high-rank foundation establishment stage. Every one of them was holding their breath and concealing themselves in the main courtyard, seeming as if they were patiently waiting for something. What surprised Heshi the most was the fact that this entire residence was separated by a boundary. The front yard was eerie. The martial artists were all hidden in secret places, not speaking and not moving, while the backyard was filled with patrolling martial artists. At times, one could even hear their boisterous laughter and conversation. The map shopkeeper Qin gave her indicated that the location of the basement was in the backyard. This allowed Heshi to be convinced just a bit more of this map's authenticity. Relying on the Purple Abyss Vine's unique ability, Heshi was able to quickly break through the boundary and travel through the backyard's various houses. In the time it took to burn a stick of incense, she was finally able to locate the basement's entrance, which was similar to an ancestral hall. The simple jade slip was lightly inserted into the notch at the entrance of the basement. As the basement began opening, a murky and moist smell along with the pungent smell of blood assaulted one's senses. Heshi's body flashed into the basement. After walking for a moment, she saw an iron door. This iron door seemed to be very thick and didn't seem to have a lock or chain. Evidently, this door needed to be opened from the inside. Heshi pushed against the door but found out that it didn't even move an inch, and the light in her eyes dimmed a little. Suddenly, Xie Chongming's harsh face flashed through Heshi's mind. The corners of her mouth raised up and she quickly took out a disguise from her space, putting it on her face. In the space of a few breaths, the originally beautiful youth transformed into a grisly bearded old man. Even the greedy glint in Xie Chongming's eyes was imitated to perfection. Although her build couldn't be changed in such a short period of time, this disguise would be sufficient inside the dusky basement. Heshi softly knocked on the iron door. Soon after, a square hole appeared on the iron door. A guard peered out of the hole and at once, he saw the disguised Heshi's impatient face. "Why haven't you quickly opened the door? Until what time do you want me to wait here?" 1. Sushi, a period of time between 7 and 9 p.m. The guard was clearly shocked and stuttered, "Xie? Dr. Xie? Why would you be here at this time? Aren't you supposed to be at the front? Presumptuous." Heshi's strict voice said. The loud voice and intonation were exactly the same as Dr. Xie's voice. "Whatever I want to do and wherever I want to be, when is it your turn to ask me questions? And you still haven't quickly opened the door." The guard no longer dared to tarry and immediately went to press some mechanism on the other side of the door. As the iron door opened, caw sounds were heard, but before the guard could clearly see Dr. Xie's appearance, a purple shadow suddenly came out. Only he was heard as the guard felt a burst of sharp pain on his neck. He didn't even have time to groan before he dropped to the floor, severing any opportunity to live anymore. Heshi closed the iron door and took off the disguise on her face. Her footsteps were noiseless as she began advancing forward. The further she walked in, the more pungent the stinky and bloody smell became, causing one to feel even more nauseous. After walking approximately 2 more steps, Heshi heard the coarse voice of a male. Why place rotten flesh here at the intersection? Just looking at it spoils one's appetite. Why haven't you quickly tossed it to a corner? Soon after, another person's laughing voice answered, this isn't some rotten flesh, they're clearly still alive. It's just that, the pain and suffering of being alive is much worse than being dead. Heshi's figure flashed like a phantom. Soon after, she was hidden inside a corner, looking towards a not-so-distant place. This place was clearly a prison. At this time, it was brightly lit and there were several men dressed in black clothing and holding weapons, guarding the prison. There were also some males who wore strange totems on their clothing, gathering together in 2s and 3s as they looked after something. It wasn't obvious what they were studying. From Heshi's point of view, she could only clearly see the 2 men who were just speaking. They seemed to be about 30 or 40 years old and they were at meridian stage. At this moment, there was a short and stout male among these people. His coarse and short hand held a piece of fur, turning it over up and down and left and right, suspiciously saying, "Are you sure this is the fur of a 9-tailed fox? How come this looks nearly the same as an ordinary beast's fur to me?" Another thin and tall male saw his actions and became shocked. At once, he threw himself at the fox fur and carefully took it back, unhappily saying, "You be a bit more careful, okay? This is genuine fox fur. In the entirety of Miluo continent, nobody can take out a second one as fresh and intact as this one. If you were to take this to the market to sell, even if it was a 9th-rank magic weapon, you could exchange this for 8 or 10 of them. Do you understand? 8 or 10 9th-rank magic weapons?" The short and stout guard was scared silly. The eyes looking upon the 9-tailed fox fur immediately became 70% more passionate. The thin and tall male carefully stored the 9-tailed fox fur inside a jade box and mischievously laughed. Of course, it's because of the fact that this 9-tailed fox fur is so precious that Elder Jiang has instructed you and me to come down here and skin this fox. You know, out of all the experts in Jiang Manor, the 2 of us are the best at skinning the skin, off the prisoners. This time, you and I have made such a large contribution. When Elder Jiang evaluates us, he'll surely bestow countless rewards to the 2 of us. When the short and stout heard these words, he immediately felt proud of himself and laughed. That's only natural, we're even able to skin off human skin completely and fully without any part of the skin receiving any damage. Don't even mention this small fox. After saying this, he picked up a stick and poked the meatball. Are you certain that this little fox is still alive? The previous people who had their skin peeled off only lived for 2 hours. Seeing that the time they were suffering and in pain didn't last long, your daddy, out of sorts. That's correct. Next to them was a meatball that was dripping with blood. The meatball's entire body didn't have any fur on it and it was lightly twitching. If one didn't carefully look at it, they truly wouldn't be able to tell that this was a living animal. Forget about it even being a 9-tailed fox. The tall and thin male's face held a "you idiot" expression as he laughed. Don't look at the bloody ball in this moment. Don't forget, this is a 9-tailed fox. Do you think that their magical ability and power can be compared to some insignificant and ordinary person? Feel at ease, even if we put her under the scorching sun for 3 days and 3 nights, she won't die. Only this feeling is definitely 100 times more painful than dying. He. The short and stout guard's face had an excited expression. After Elder Jiang gets those extinct methods from that so-called genius doctor, it would be better to take this little fox out and let the sun shine on it. Up until now, I still remember the miserable shrieks the fox emitted when we were skinning her. This sound is truly too wonderful. It's even more exciting than torturing 100 people. The tall and thin guard's eyes were also filled with light, but he shook his head. Forget it, don't even dream about it. This is a 9-tailed spirit fox. Its fur isn't the only valuable item on it. All the flesh and bones on its body are treasured objects. Elder Jiang specifically instructed that her body couldn't have any damage. If you truly toss this little fox aside and let it die, then just wait and see how Elder Jiang will punish you. Fine. Got it. The short and stout guard's enthusiasm waned. But thinking about this little fox's origins, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. I didn't expect Dr. Xie's luck to be so good. The hostage he randomly took turned out to be a nine-tailed fox. Wait for that young genius doctor to be captured. Dr. Xie's achievements will turn big profits. Perhaps the entire family will even receive rewards. Can Dr. Xie's awesomeness compare to Elder Jiang's? The thin and tall guard sneered. With one look, Elder Jiang was able to tell that this little Gunyang was a nine-tailed fox. Moreover, in a short amount of time, he was able to turn her submissive. There wasn't even an opportunity for her to use the self-exploding enchanted pill. Naturally. The short and stout guard laughed. Who is Elder Jiang? Whether it's medical expertise or cultivation stage, he's number one. Most of all, opening up this underground test pharmacy, it's truly too much like my heart's intention. But saying this little fox's age is so small, but her temper is truly fierce. If it weren't for Elder Jiang's vigilance, she would have been able to use the self-exploding enchanted pill. If that was really the case, our entire prison and test pharmacy would be finished. Zazie. This is merely a little fox who grew a tail. Unexpectedly, it's so difficult to deal with. If it were to grow 9 tails, then it would be even more difficult. The tall and thin man also had some lingering fears and shook his head. If it becomes even a little bigger, I'm not sure we can handle it. So, our luck is too good. In this world, there are very few 9-tailed spirit foxes. If we allow them to grow up, even mighty nascent soul-stage martial artists would be unable to deal with them, let alone us. Unfortunately, this little fox has only recently changed into human form. To add on to that, it didn't run away in order to risk its life to protect the people inside B courtyard. If not, she could have run off into the mountains and fields. Based on a fox's agility, we wouldn't be able to easily find her. I really didn't know that this fox is clearly a witch. Why would it risk its life to protect those lowly people? If not, it wouldn't have been so easily captured. It really is too stupid, The two men simultaneously burst into laughter. But before they finished laughing, they suddenly became quiet. The two people only felt a slight pain on their neck before a purple vine quietly wound around them. Catching them off guard, it suspended the two people high up in the air. The two people's faces showed shock, but they weren't frightened at all. From head to toe, their spiritual energy was suddenly set free. The short and stout guard already began shouting. Who launched a sneak attack? Come out for your daddy! But, just as his words were said, both men discovered that something wasn't right. They realized that the 10 square meters surrounding them was enveloped in a layer of a purple enchanted boundary. Inside this enchantment, they found out that their spiritual energy was restricted and their voices couldn't be transmitted out. And at this moment, all the people inside the prison were occupied with their own matters. Nobody bothered with what was happening at this side of the prison. The two men's faces finally had some fear in it, and their eyes were filled with confusion. As they violently struggled, they also shouted until their throats were hoarse. What does partial credit count for if you have the skill? Then come out and fight with your daddy. As soon as his voice fell, the figure of a woman appeared from the darkness. The pretty, seemingly moonlit complexion opposed the prison which reeked of blood. But her dark and icy eyes seemed somewhat crueler than this dark prison. You, what sort of person are you? The thin and tall man raised his voice and yelled, How did you get in here? He didn't pay any mind to the two hollering people. Instead, she step by step walked to the corner that the meatball had been thrown into. Air grazed against it as blood dripped off the furless body, causing it to shudder from pain. The hands resting by Heshi's side suddenly clenched and her fingernails dug into the hollow of her palm. Blood dripped from her fingers, but she took no notice of it. A scene from her previous life appeared in front of her eyes. She was in a heap of garbage. After rummaging through it, she finally found her Didi's one body. He didn't have an intact skull or a thin body. There were only entirely broken remains. That sort of despair, pain, and overwhelming hatred was something Hishi wouldn't ever forget in her lifetime. After that, she abandoned all emotion and forgot all her dreams. With all her might, she began to become stronger so that her hopes could no longer have that sort of despair. After reincarnating, she thought that she was strong enough, that she could protect whoever she wanted to protect. But in the end, she couldn't do anything well. She lost Wet Nurse Chin, she lost that warm family. Now, did she also have to lose Xiaoli? Heshi slowly lowered her body. She wanted to carry Xiaoli, but her shaking hands didn't even dare to touch her. Because she knew that without the protection of fur, her skin was naked and exposed. This was a kind of suffering and torture. Even being touched by air would cause her to feel so much pain it wouldn't want to live, let alone being touched by her hand or clothes. And at this moment, the tall and thin man who was suspended midair suddenly came back to his senses and yelled, "You are that young genius doctor? Aren't you supposed to be in the front yard? Why have you appeared here?" The light in Hishi's eyes dimmed as dark raging flames dyed her glassy black eyes. She slowly stood up and looked towards the two people being suspended in the air by the purple abyss vine. "You guys are fond of skinning people, right?" The two people's faces were filled with bewilderment. The expression of the youth in front of their eyes was too excessive, causing their bones to be filled with terror. As if this youth could dismember their body into thousands of pieces by just looking at them. The short and stout man couldn't help but shout, "You better not be too arrogant. Elder Jiang and the others will quickly find out about your presence. You're just an insignificant foundation establishment stage youth. Even if you have some small tricks, when you meet Elder Jiang and the others who are at Gold Core stage, what use will you be? If you obediently listen and sit with your hands tied, waiting to be captured, then we can ask for leniency for you." Having heard what was said, Hushi lowly laughed. The purple abyss vine swayed around before putting the people, who were suspended in the air, back down. The two people thought she was afraid and became overjoyed at the good news. The short and stout male further raised his voice, "You can be considered tactful. Wait for me to meet with Elder Jiang, certainly." Suddenly, his proud words turned into mournful shrieks, and simultaneously shouting alongside him was the tall and thin male. All one could see was the hole that the purple abyss vines slashed on the top of their heads. After their scalps were cut open, their red flesh was exposed. The two people cried in fear as they raised their heads. All they saw was Hushi slowly walking over and sprinkling some medicinal powder on their heads. After a moment, their heart-wrenching and lung-splitting wails filled the entire enchanted boundary the purple abyss vine put down. If an ordinary person heard that sort of pained shrieks, their hairs would certainly stand on end. But Heshi was incomparably calm, even her ice-cold eyes resembling those of Azura from hell didn't change a bit. After 10 minutes passed, 2 pieces of undamaged skin appeared on the cold and moist floor of the prison alongside 2 bloody people who were both hairless and skinless. The 2 bloody people on the floor hadn't stopped breathing yet, their mouths were still incessantly letting out painful moans. Heshi arrogantly looked down on the 2 people and slowly said, "Don't you guys enjoy skinning off other people's skins? Now your own skin has been completely peeled off, don't tell me that you shouldn't feel gratified?" Those 2 guards had long since already started letting out more air than taking air in. Soon, they would meet a violent death. Heshi waved her hand and beckoned the purple abyss vine. She was just about to end their lives. When suddenly she heard 1111, sua sounds, and without waiting for her to react, countless insects and ants came out from somewhere within the prison. They looked like black waves, going towards the 2 bloody people. In the blink of an eye, numerous insects and ants crawled all over the 2 bloody people. Some dug into their mouth and nose, others gnawed on their flesh, and some dug into their eyes only to emerge from their nostrils again. Over and over again, their anguished wailing shook the enchanted boundary the purple abyss vine placed down. Even Heshi, who was used to seeing large scenes, became more frightened than she would be seeing the scene down in the 18th level of hell. This scene shook her so much, her expression didn't return. After waiting a few minutes, the anguished wailing came to a stop. Those two bloody people had already become a pile of ghastly bones. And those ants and insects resembling waves retreated the same way they came, noiselessly. When they passed by Xiao Li, they halted for a moment. But they didn't seem to have the desire to go gnaw and bite her. Instead, one after another, they spit something out of their mouths. Soon after, the ants and insects completely dispersed. The only thing left behind were the bones of the two guards. Heshi recalled Xiao Li's ability to communicate with animals and guessed that these insects and ants came to avenge her. It was just that these ants and insects were ordinary creatures. They couldn't penetrate a martial artist's spiritual energy barrier, so when Xiao Li was skinned in front of them, they were powerless to do anything. All along, they waited as Heshi completely destroyed these two people before they dared to come out and cleanly gnaw and bite through these men. Heshi first poured the bone water on the two people's skeletons, ensuring that they would disappear without a trace from this world, before she went back to Xiao Li's side. By now, Xiao Li's circumstances weren't too optimistic. Although her vitality wasn't completely exhausted, her body's enchanted force was almost entirely used up. With this sort of circumstances, even if she was able to survive, she would become an ordinary fox without any spiritual wisdom. She would never again be able to become her Xiao Li. Furthermore, the most troublesome issue was the fur that had been skinned off. The skin of people and fur of animals was a form of protection for oneself. In the case that fur or skin left the body, it would lose all vitality and there wouldn't be any way to join it together with the body. This was completely different from a broken hand or foot. And without her fur, even if Xiao Li recovered her enchanted force, sooner or later, she would die. After all, there was many harmful bacteria that couldn't be seen, floating around in the air. Even if one's enchanted power was outstanding, it wouldn't be able to continuously fight against infection. In a flash, Dandan and the little dragon already appeared by Heshi's side. Dandan cried and threw himself at Xiao Li's body, only to be pulled back by Heshi. The small fellow cried so much his eyes were completely red. Choked with emotion, he said, "Mother, what's wrong with Xiao Li Jiejiawan? Will she die?" Although he once thought about eating this nine-tailed fox, after associating with her, Dandan was already fond of this Xiao Tu Jiejia. When he thought about her miserable state and the possibility of her dying, Dandan cried until he didn't even know who he was. Contrary to one might think, the little golden dragon wasn't concerned over the little fox's life or death. It was just that the golden dragon and the nine-tailed fox were spiritual beasts that all of mankind yearned for. Their entire body was precious and longed after by people. If one appeared in front of people when they were still an infant, it was very likely that they would be skinned and their bones would be torn apart. Looking at the state that the little fox was in now, the little golden dragon nevertheless felt a heavy feeling and hurt for her. In addition, Dandan was still crying so broken-heartedly, causing him, the little golden dragon, to feel even more despondent. He didn't want to see Dandan, that fellow, crying. But the little fox's whole body had been stripped of skin and her body's enchanted force was almost entirely drained. He was afraid that even if the previous master of Zijin Palace reincarnated, he wouldn't be able to save the little fox's life. AI, the human race was truly avaricious and repulsive. Although they already captured the little fox, they still wanted to skin her. They were no better than beasts. Dandan was still crying while he embraced Heshi's neck. "Mother, I don't want Xiao Li Jiejie to die. You save her, okay?" At this moment, Heshi's gaze rested on the substance that the insects and ants spit out. As she looked, the suspicion in her eyes slowly turned into surprise. Hearing Dandan's words, she immediately replied, "Rest assured, I'll definitely save Xiao Li. Nobody could take away Xiao Li's life. These bastards can't and neither can Yama." After she said this, the speed of Heshi's hands increased. She swiftly took out all kinds of tools from her space. Afterwards, she used spiritual power to wrap up Xiao Li and place her inside a bucket full of spiritual spring water. Upon entering the spiritual spring water, Xiao Li let out pained cries and her entire body ceaselessly trembled. Without any fur protecting her, even if she touched the purest spiritual spring water, it would still cause her to feel so grieved she would wish she was dead. Dandan covered his face as he cried, not daring to look at Xiao Li's pained and anguished appearance. His small face was filled with concerned and frightened tears. The little golden dragon sat next to Dandan. He couldn't help but look towards Heshi with a gaze filled with suspicion. He was completely convinced that this woman didn't have the means to be able to save this little fox. After all, this nine-tailed fox had no fur, its enchanted force was half gone, and it was only at meridian stage. But at this moment, Heshi's expression became steady and calm. She quickly took out medicine powders from her space and sprinkled it into the spiritual spring water. These anesthesia medicines were used to numb the nerves. Once they entered the bathing bucket, Xiao Li's cries gradually changed into moans. Only her eyes stayed the same, closed shut from the pain. Her body was still twitching intermittently. Heshi cautiously and solemnly took the fur out of the jade box. Using spiritual spring water, she carefully cleaned it. Then, under the little golden dragon's astonished gaze, she picked up a ball of yellow translucent gelatinous substance from the floor and began slowly smearing it on Xiao Li's fur. Flabbergasted, the little golden dragon questioned, What is that? Heshi's movements didn't stop as she quietly replied, "This is nectar from the thousand-leaf flower. I saw on ancient records, there was a replenishing bone and growing flesh efficacy. It's just that, according to ancient records, this flower is extinct in Miluo continent. It's said that, as long as you smear this nectar and a large quantity of replenishing spiritual energy medications, you can regrow the limbs of martial artists. Don't even mention rebinding skin and meat." Finished speaking, Heshi no longer paid any mind to the little golden dragon's astonished gaze. She took the fur, that had been cleaned by the spiritual spring water and had thousand-leaf flower nectar smeared on it, out of the spiritual spring water. Soon after, Heshi's hands began to move faster. She carefully and quickly covered Xiao Li's body with the fur, allowing every inch of the body to be completely joined together by the fur. Following that, with the flick of her wrist, 10 silver needles appeared at her fingertips. One after another, they entered each of Xiao Li's major acupuncture points. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense passed, Xiao Li's body was densely packed with numerous silver needles. And Heshi's complexion turned pale. She had used past the limit for her spiritual energy. The spiritual spring water in the bucket, for some unknown reason, began to lightly boil. As time passed, the fur that had been draped over Xiao Li's body also began to slowly truly combine together with her body. Xiao Li's originally tightly closed eyes began to slowly open, and upon seeing Heshi's silhouette, her eyes brightened. "Miss? You came back?" Heshi nodded her head. "Yes, I came back." "Xiao Li, refrain from talking for now and obediently turn around your enchanted force. Allow your body to recover." Dense pain and guilt rose in Xiao Li's eyes. Her voice trembled as she said, "Miss, I couldn't save Wet Nurse Chin and couldn't save B Courtyard's people. You gave B Courtyard to me, but I... Forgive me, I'm no good. Xiao Li, don't talk anymore." Heshi's hands tightly clenched into fists, hoarsely saying, "Shi Jia and the others didn't die. I already brought them back to life. All you need to do right now is keep on living, stay by my side, and wait for your Gidge to come back." "Shi Jia didn't die. Too good." At this moment, Xiao Li clearly had the appearance of a little fox as her face flashed with a brilliant smile. "Miss is truly too awesome. I really admire you, to be able to continue and follow by Mrs. side. I want to always follow by Mrs. side. And Gidge, we will never separate." But, cuckoo, Xiao Li let out 2 coughs and her voice became more and more muffled. "But it seems impossible, my enchanted force is already broken. There's no way I can continue to stay by Mrs. side. I'm sorry, miss. But, to be able to become a person in this lifetime, meet Gidge and Mississippi Xiao Li. Xiao Li doesn't regret it one bit, doesn't feel sad at all. Mistake? You? As she was speaking, Xiao Li's voice became weaker and weaker. The little fox's body slowly submerged deeper into the spiritual spring water. The enchanted force on her body scattered at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the wake of her enchanted force disappearing, the fur on her body became darker and darker. Her life's breath also gradually faded away. Xiao Li Jiejie? Dandan cried, wanting to throw himself over there, but he was firmly held back by the little golden dragon. The little golden dragon's facial expression also showed grief. At this moment, He blankly stood in one place. Her teeth bit down on her lip, and even after her lip split, she didn't notice. Suddenly, a brilliant light shone in her eyes and a purple undercurrent violently surged up. The voice that came out was determined and sounded like crashing ice crystals. Xiao Li, I already previously said that I would protect you from death, so I certainly won't let you dissipate from this world. If I, Nalan He, can't even protect the people by my side, what's the point of my second life? When she finished speaking, He suddenly took out a knife and cut the hollow of her palm. But after she injured her palm, no blood flowed out. Instead, there was a dim red glow around the wound, circling around the surrounding area. A moment later, the dim red glow scattered and a drop of diluted gold slowly seeped out of the wound on her palm, dripping onto Xiao Li's body. Momentarily, the smell of blood filled the air and the rich spiritual qi permeated the room. This was a martial artist's blood essence. The blood had just dripped onto Xiao Li's body when He's fingers rapidly joined together, forming an image. After the image was formed, Xiao Li's body emitted dim, red rays of light. The dim, red ray of light appeared to be like her enchanted force, scattering out. But it also seemed to be portraying a totem. He's expression became extremely grave. The image formed into a lotus flower, its profound voice yelled two characters, form a contract. Right after the voice fell, the dim, red rays on Xiao Li's body suddenly went into He's body. Subsequently, it slowly condensed into a little pattern that resembled the nine-tailed fox on her palm. It was just that the pattern very quickly disappeared without a trace. And Xiao Li, whose enchanted force was previously completely depleted and on the verge of death, slowly received rays of light on her body. Her breaths also gradually picked up again. Upon seeing Xiao Li come back to life, Dandan happily bounced and hopped, scuttling over to Xiao Li's side. Circling around the bathing bucket, he said, "Mother, you're really too awesome. Xiao Li Jiejie is alive. She really managed to stay alive. Too great." But, having watched the scene from start to finish, the little golden dragon's eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. She unexpectedly created a life and death contract with the nine-tailed fox. And it wasn't an ordinary master and pet contract, it was one that shared the master's fate and vitality with the spiritual pet. In other words, if the nine-tailed fox was ever on the verge of dying, He would give her vitality to her, allowing her to survive. Naturally, it goes the other way as well. If He's vitality was exhausted, the nine-tailed fox would use her enchanted force to replenish her life. This sort of shared life contract didn't have any advantages. Over the last 10 million years, nobody had ever concluded one because there weren't any master or pets that were willing to sacrifice oneself to this degree. Furthermore, this little fox was clearly very weak. For He and her to form a contract, it would only burden her. But He did it. Moreover, she did it without the slightest hesitation. The little golden dragon's mouth opened and closed for a while, but in the end he didn't say anything. He was incapable of comprehending He's decision to sacrifice herself to this extent for the little fox. He felt an indescribable feeling. This sort of master was the type that truly deserved to have him follow them. After determining that Xiao Li's enchanted force was no longer draining and her life was stable, He threw the medicinal bucket containing Xiao Li back into her space. Dandan was unwilling to go back, wrapping himself around He's thigh. His little face was filled with righteous indignation. "Mother, you're going to go fight bad people, right? The bastards who acted against Xiao Li Jiejie like this are simply too abominable. Dandan wants to come with you to fight against those bad people." Hushi looked at Dandan's gleaming eyes that were filled with burning rage and lightly rubbed his head. You can rest assured. Mother will definitely make sure that group of brutes pays the proper price for their actions. It's just that, Xiaoli Jejie is alone in my space. So lonely, and she hasn't even completely recovered from her injury. She needs someone to look after her. Dandan, you obediently stay inside the space and look after Xiaoli Jejie, okay? Although Dandan's origin wasn't ordinary, he was extremely weak currently. Just now, he had watched on helplessly as Xiaoli endured hardship. How could she let her own darling suffer hardship? So, Hushi could only use these words to divert Dandan's attention. After all, Dandan was most concerned with Xiaoli's fate at the moment. Sure enough, after Dandan listened to her words, an embarrassed expression showed on his face. Dandan wants to accompany Xiaoli Jejie and wants to look after Xiaoli Jejie. But Dandan also wants to be at Mother's side to fight against the bad people together. The little golden dragon who off to the side and had been silent up until now suddenly said, I'll accompany Laodan to teach a lesson to that group of bad people. Dandan, you obediently stay in the space and look after the little fox. Dandan was startled, turning his head to look at the little golden dragon. Hushi knit her brow and was just about to refuse. The little golden dragon flew into the air and promptly lifted his head up. Don't underestimate me. Ever since I ate the divine dragon fruit, my strength has improved by a lot. Although I'm not Lao Da's rival, ordinary martial artists at foundation establishment stage or meridian stage are almost the same as garbage to me. I can kill them as I wish. Lauda, you deal with the main culprits while I stay to the side and tidy up those hired thugs and hunting dogs. This is okay, right? The words that the little golden dragon actually caused Hushi to become distracted. This fellow, whether it was inside the secret territory or outside it, liked being called by women and girls. Now, he has so honestly called her Lauda without any mocking or teasing meaning, causing her to be unaccustomed to it. But the little golden dragon wasn't wrong. This other courtyard clearly had experts inside it. If these experts were at Meridian stage, it would still be fine. But if they were at Gold Core stage, it would be difficult for her to manage fighting them when she was alone. If other bodyguards swarmed around her, even if she had an enormous amount of ability, nothing could be done to take revenge. Hushi nodded her head. Okay, you can follow by my side. Just remember, if there's danger, immediately run. Don't pull my leg. 2. The little golden dragon's face twisted, thinking, Benzeng is a grand golden dragon who's acting as your supporting person. Yet you still suspect that I'll hold you back. This woman was simply 2. AI, forget it. Who told her to be the Lauda he personally approved? The little golden dragon's face was filled with resentment. But in the end, he didn't say anything. Rather, he just silently nodded his head. Hushi rubbed Dandan's head. This time, Dandan didn't continue being willful. Instead, he grabbed Hushi's finger, obediently nodding his head. Mother, I will take good care of Xiaoli Jejie. You must take revenge for Xiaoli Jejie. Dandan quickly returned back to her space and Hushi left the Purple Abyss Vine's enchanted boundary. Slowly, she walked deeper inside the prison. Before going to look for the main culprits to take revenge, she wanted to see what shady business these people were conducting in the prison. This sort of thick smell of blood and putrid smell wouldn't come from merely killing a few people. Hushi had already previously mentally prepared herself. But when she walked into the deepest part of the basement, the scene in front of her shocked her so much, her breathing stopped for a few moments. Just after turning a corner, Hushi heard the sound of a child crying. At this moment, several men wearing eccentric clothes were in the process of tying 2 young children to a stone table. Soon after, they cut open their stomachs, but she couldn't see what they were moving around in there. Those 2 children were no more than 5 or 6 years old and had their chest opened and stomach split without any anesthesia. That sort of pain was definitely not something they could endure. The sound of heartbreaking crying which made people worriedly pray rung out. So painful, Daddy, I'm very hurt. Save me, but the crying became weaker and weaker. In the span of a few short breaths, it turned into pained whimpers. Soon after, a brief shriek sounded out before it turned silent. Among the oddly dressed group of men, one shook his head and angrily said, "Unexpectedly, the fog grass failed again. This sure long grass seed is too difficult to grow. Upon contact with nearly every medicinal fertilizer, this seed will get swallowed by the dantian. Even a fragrant incense can't survive." Another person said, "These two children are considered good. They were able to survive past the time it took to burn a stick of incense. Zazie." Their entire stomach got engulfed by the sure long grass. That manner is too wretched. It seems like the younger the child is, the great chance they have of surviving. Next time, we'll test it on a newborn infant. Correct. It's best if the parents are also foundation establishment stage. So the infant can certainly support the Shirling grass seed until it buds. The scene in front of Hushi caused her eyes to contract. The boy and girl laying on the stone bed had long since already stopped breathing. Their stomach had been pried wide open, and inside their stomach there were two gray blades of grass leaves reaching out. It's just that, they apparently seemed to have already withered, softly hanging to the side. The two children lying on the stone bed had faces filled with anxiety and alarm. They were so small. They still hadn't understood the dirty and frightening things in this world, nor had they enjoyed the beauty of life before their lives had been taken away in the most painful manner. Step by step, Hushi began walking forward. And at this moment, the group of men, surrounding the corpses of the two children, also discovered Hushi's presence. "Who are you? Don't you know this is a restricted area? Who allowed you to casually come in here?" Hushi's eyes were ice cold and her hands didn't hesitate. In an instant, a purple vine flew out. The sharp tip of the solid vine entered inside these people's bodies, making piu-piu sounds. These oddly dressed males didn't even have time to groan before they got turned into dried corpses by the purple vine. Hushi walked up to the two children's corpses, dazedly staring at them for a moment. Soon after, she extended her hand to softly close their two eyes. Loud, quickly come. Come look at these. I'm unsure why the author said stone bed when she originally said stone table, but we'll just go with it, I suppose. The little golden dragon who had originally volunteered to clear out all the miscellaneous people in the underground prisons suddenly let out an alarmed yell. Hushi's figure flashed and appeared next to the little golden dragon's side. She was just about to ask the little golden dragon what was going on when Hushi saw the scene before her. Her mouth was wide open and she was unable to say anything for half a day. This underground prison had a place to interrogate and torture prisoners and the large site that she had just encountered with the operating table. But the prison's deepest area had a tightly closed door. When this door was opened, what appeared was a world as terrifying and cruel as hell. She only saw every room had a collecting spirit spell. Inside each spell, there was a stone bed and each stone bed had a creature laying down on it. Some of these creatures were human and others were magical beasts. But what caused people to become overwhelmed with horror was that these people and magical beasts had various kinds of spirit plants growing all over their body. These spirit plants grew out of their mouth, eyes, nose, and some others were coming out of their skin. These spirit plants were bright and gently swaying around in the spell. Apparently, they received an enormous amount of nourishment in the spell. And the people who had spirit plants crammed in their eyes, ears, mouth and nose. But unfortunately, their stomachs were still moving up and down. They were still breathing, they were alive. So much so that their expressions showed that they wished they were dead. Hushi sucked in a cold breath, slowly saying, "These brutes, are they really worthy to be called human?" Hushi recognized that she was vicious and merciless, cruel and cold to people. But that was only if other people angered her. Otherwise, she wouldn't kill them. She didn't treat other creatures' lives as grass, trampling over and tormenting them. Moreover, the scene in front of her eyes closely resembled the laboratory she rescued her deity from in her past life. Using people as experimental mice in an experiment. Cutting, maltreating, and torturing as they wish just in order to achieve their base. Just in order to fulfill their own greedy desires. The little golden dragon was also startled by the scene comparable to hell in front of him. He shivered, his mouth and tongue was dry for half a day before he was able to say anything. A I thought that these types of bloody, cruel, and dark methods to raise these bound black spirit plants had already become extinct in Miluo continent. I didn't think that these people were so bold, daring to secretly do such inhumane experiments in the basement of this desolate residence. Heshi turned her head. You know of this experiment? The little golden dragon nodded his head. With a grave expression, he replied, 8,000 years prior, there were some martial artists who discovered that martial artists with spiritual energy abundant bodies had the best nourishment for bound black spirit plants. Bound black spirit plants were precious and hard to look for. They were even more difficult to raise, but they were extremely useful in every single aspect. In order to gain more resources and satisfy their greed, this group of people began capturing all kinds of creatures. Without sparing any methods, they began to forcefully raise bound black spirit plants. The method of forcefully raising the spirit plants are extremely cruel. The martial artists who were used as nourishment couldn't live, nor could they die. 1. While they were alive, they had to bear the pain of their body being ripped apart until the nutrients in their bodies were completely taken by the spirit plants. In the beginning, these people used magical beasts to forcefully raise the plants. But they slowly realized that the magical beast's ability to nourish the spirit plants couldn't compare to the abilities of martial artists. Subsequently, they began to abduct martial artists to use as fertilizer. These martial artists got the name medicinal fertilizer. Later, because too many martial artists were worried and this method to forcefully raise the plants was too cruel, 3 kingdoms united to boycott it. The people who used forceful methods to raise the plants through medicinal fertilizers were completely massacred by the angry relatives and friends of the martial artists who were harmed. 1. Couldn't live, nor could they die. The martial artists wouldn't be actually living, they would basically be forever stuck in a half-conscious state. In the past 1,000 years, I haven't heard of anyone using medicinal fertilizers to forcefully raise bound black spirit plants. I even thought that these cruel methods had become extinct. I didn't expect that I would see it here. Heshi wrinkled her eyebrows, and just as she was about to speak, she heard a feeble voice behind her. Begging you? Kill me? Begging you? Kill me? Heshi suddenly turned her head and saw a young lady that hadn't even reached 20 years old laying on the stone bed in the opposite room. The girl was entirely naked, and her dried-up and messy hair was scattered on the stone bed. Blue-black mushroom plants grew all over her body, turning her originally bright and clean flesh into soil for these mushrooms. Her body had been suffused with a rotten and stinky smell. And these mushrooms had taken root deeply inside her body. Some were mixed alongside her internal organs and dantian, others were bound to her skeleton. Slowly were consuming her life force. Heshi extended her hand, wanting to probe this young woman in order to further investigate her circumstances, but the little golden dragon blocked her. Lauda, don't waste your strength. These people are no longer able to be saved. The little golden dragon sighed, and with a heavy voice, he said, the seeds of these bound black spirit plants were all directly planted in this people. Afterward, with the help of these martial artists' nourishment, they slowly began to germinate. Once these plants sprout, their life breath and the spirit plants merge together, becoming one. Their heart and soul will all be replaced by the roots of these plants. This is also why they can still breathe even though the spirit plants have blocked up their mouth and nose. So, Lauda, even if you destroyed these spirit plants, these people would be unable to continue living. And if you don't eliminate these spirit plants, their life force will slowly be absorbed by these spirit plants until ultimately, they also die. Having talked up to here, the little golden dragon's face had a sympathetic expression on it. These medicinal fertilizers are already equal to a dead person. How long will it take for them to lose their life force? The only question is merely a matter of time. Furthermore, if they die because the bound black spirit plants absorbed all their life force, their mind will be entirely wiped out, so much so that they wouldn't have a chance to reincarnate. AI. Lauda, you killing them would be the best ending for them. After hearing the little golden dragon's words, Heshi sunk into silence. And the young lady once again extended her hand towards Heshi, stammering, begging you, kill us, rather than Live this way? It would be better to let me die. Release. The light in Hishi's eyes slowly condensed and became calm. The purple vine in her hands slowly swayed around. She turned to stare at this young lady in the eyes and solemnly nodded. Okay, I'll agree with your request. Just as she finished speaking, the purple vine suddenly sent out a light golden flame. When the vine extended forwards, the light golden flame touched the spirit plants on the young lady. Those bound black spirit plants violently began to shake, seeming as if they were afraid and wanted to run away. But the light golden flame was incomparably strong. In practically the blink of an eye, it seemed to have swallowed the young lady and the blue-black plants inside itself. The light golden flame enveloped the young lady's body. Soon, it seemed that she would die a violent death. But the young lady's face let out a gratified smile. With sparkling eyes, she looked towards Hishi and softly said, "Thank you." Moments later, the young lady on the stone bed had been burnt into bones and the bound black plants disappeared without a trace. But Hishi didn't stop moving. The purple vine flew out of her body. Bringing the light golden flame, it scattered it around the entire basement. Wherever the golden flame went, nothing escaped being burned. Everything turned into ashes. To the side, the little golden dragon loudly clapped his hands. Lauda is mighty, destroy all these harmful items. In the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the several hundred bound black spirit plants this underground laboratory had been cultivating for several hundred years was completely destroyed by Hishi. She collected all the corpses and using a storage ring, she stored all the skeletons inside. When this whole situation was over, she was going to bury them outside. These people had no way to live a good life, so she hoped they would be able to rest in peace after death. After completely destroying the underground laboratory, Hishi brought the little golden dragon along the former road, heading back. This one time, she didn't intend to conceal her figure. Since Shaoli had already been saved, her only goal now was to make these brutes pay their debt in blood. Once the patrolling martial artists in the backyard saw Hishi, they all rushed forward to surround her. Moreover, all these martial artists were at high-rank foundation establishment stage and all their clothes was the same. Between advance and retreat, they became each other's corners, closing off all ways of escape. It was clear they were well-trained and cooperative. The 30-year-old tall man leading them pointed at Hishi, strictly yelling, "Where did this rude youngster come from, daring to enter my Jiang family's restricted area?" As he was talking, he was also pointing the gun in his hand at Hishi. His body exploded with fierceness. Hishi slowly raised her eyebrow and repeated one sentence, "Jiang family?" Before coming to other courtyard, she always believed that this whole matter was orchestrated by Dr. Xie. But the two martial artists who were just skinned inside the basement had kept saying that it was Elder Jiang who let them do it. Now this guard also said this was Jiang family's other courtyard. In other words, Dr. Xie was related to these matters, but he wasn't the mastermind. There was still someone behind him. Moreover, it was this person being called Elder Jiang. When the group of guards saw Hishi's reaction, they immediately burst into loud laughter. One of the people inside the group even said towards the lead martial artist, "Captain, there's no need to ask any more. It's certain he's a lost little cash cow that, by chance, doesn't have eyes and was delivered to our door. However, since this is the case and he delivered himself to our door, we should accept him. It just happens to be that a few days before, didn't Elder Jiang also said that there wasn't enough medicinal fertilizers to use? Look at this youngster, such soft and tender flesh, abundant spiritual energy. And even though he is only at foundation establishment stage, he escaped our eyes and ears and entered other courtyard. It can be assumed he has some sort of capability. As I see it, he is just right to be a medicinal fertilizer." This group of guards encircling Hishi accessed from head to toe. Apparently, they didn't put her in their eyes at all. Hishi actually let out an eerie smile. "Medicinal fertilizer? Are you talking about those martial artists underground that are used to raise bound black spirit plants?" "What?" When the captain of the guards heard what she said, his complexion immediately changed. "You went to the basement? How is this possible?" Another guard cried out in fear. The basement is guarded by a mysterious iron door that's 100 jin. Even a nascent soul stage martial artist wouldn't be able to force it open without the help of a magic weapon. Hushi lightly fiddled with the purple abyss vine in her hands, unhurriedly saying, "Not only have I been to it, I also completely burned those unsightly black plants. Therefore, even if you guys find countless more medicinal fertilizers, I'm afraid it's useless." When everyone heard what she said, their facial expressions became bewildered. Just at this moment, she heard the alarmed cry of another group of patrolling guards from behind her. The basement is on fire. The fire spread up to here. In addition, it's spiritual fire. Simply can't extinguish it. In the blink of an eye, the bewilderment in the faces of these several people completely changed into alarm and astonishment. The captain of the guards made a prompt decision, saying to the guard next to him, "You, quickly go notify Elder Jiang. You others people follow me up, get this reckless youth captured for me. Really has eaten a leopard's guts, actually daring to come to my Jiang family's territory and behave so atrociously. Today, Grandpa will let you know how you will die." Exactly, this youngster is merely at foundation establishment stage. Don't tell me he's able to resist all of our attacks. Everyone follow me up. But without waiting for these guards to move, Hushi faintly laughed. "It doesn't matter if you come up together, but none of you can think of running." Right after she said that, purple vines instantly launched out of Hushi's body. The person who suffered the most was precisely the guard who ran out to notify Elder Jiang. The purple vine neatly penetrated the guards' bodies. In the blink of an eye, it sucked in all of the flesh on his body. The group of martial artists witnessing this scene were scared so much their two eyes turned blank. Some of the cowardly ones but fell onto the ground. With great difficulty, the captain of the guards held onto the long gun in his hands and forced himself to stop shaking, loudly saying, "In the end, who are you? Do you know where our Jiang family is?" Hushi's eyes were serene and large. They didn't contain a trace of human emotion in them. Her mouth lifted into a brilliant smile. It added to her beautiful appearance, making her seem prettier, like moonlight. "You're asking who I am?" she slowly asked, even going as far as to carry a somewhat tender intonation, saying, "I am the death god that will bring you guys to hell." Her words had barely sounded out when the purple vine that had already flew out and was suspended in the air acted as if it had received an order. Without stopping, it advanced towards several people. All one heard was, "Ka si," and in an instant, these several martial artists' necks had been twisted and the vine had sucked up all their flesh. But there were a few martial artists who escaped the purple vine's first attack and let out mournful calls for help. Hushi's face didn't show the slightest bit of panic, so much so that she was still filled with interest and jumped on top of a fake mountain. While sitting on the fake mountain, she swung her legs back and forth. If there wasn't the shadow of the purple vine flashing about by her side, people from far away would have believed they were looking at a snow-white and jade-skinned, delicate and elegant, innocent and pure little youth. In the blink of an eye, this entire team of martial artists had been completely massacred by the purple abyss vine. The purple abyss vine noiselessly returned to Heshi's hand, its purple leaves intimately rubbed against the white, jade-like wrist. And at this time, the other martial artists inside other courtyard heard this group of martial artists' miserable shouting. Soon, there was many martial artists quickly making their way over here. There were clearly quite a few people here that had a high level of strength. A large part of them were at the summit of foundation establishment stage, but there were also quite a few martial artists who were at meridian stage. When this group of people arrived at the scene of the murder, they were startled by all the skeletons in front of their eyes. What exactly is going on? They heard the screams and rushed here, but what they saw wasn't a fighting scene, instead it was a floor filled with bones of the dead. Suddenly, someone pointed at one of the skeletons among the corpses, crying out in fear, "Lauda, this is Sun Gang's butterfly sword." Sun Gang, it was precisely the captain of the guards from before. And at this moment, as this group of people looked on, they also discovered that the clothes these corpses were wearing were those of guards from other courtyard. The middle-aged man that brought the group over suddenly reacted, His pair of eagle-like eyes looked straight at Heshi, who was sitting on top of the fake mountain. Who is your distinguished self? Coming to my Jiang manor to cause trouble? Don't tell me you're impatient of living? Heshi's hand supported herself on the fake mountain. Her head was tilted to the side, showing her elegant complexion and graceful, snow-white neck. She slowly said, I'm not impatient of living, but when looking at this group of unreputable people, I feel impatient. Therefore, the only option I'm left with is to send you guys off to hell, so as to avoid hindering my sight. Presumptuous. Having heard what was said, the middle-aged man was seething with anger. Pointing at Heshi, he shouted, What do you count as actually daring to come to my Jiang manor and say such nonsense? And you even dare to slaughter my Jiang manor's guards? You really think my Jiang family doesn't have anyone? Come, follow me up. I want to see this foundation establishment stage waiter who acts so savage with a dog's courage in my Jiang manor. His words were furious, but the middle-aged man's hand didn't stop either. He quickly took out a cold, deep green long sword. The middle-aged man poured his spiritual energy into it, causing the sword to whiz as he swiftly flew towards Heshi, who was sitting on the fake mountain. At the same time, those Meridian stage martial artists who followed behind the middle-aged man also took out their magical flying swords and waited for action. Soon, the green long sword already began striking in front of Heshi. The purple vines wrapped around her slender arms suddenly swept out, one after another. All that was heard was, "Pa," and in the blink of an eye, flames erupted all around everyone. That green long sword was stopped mid-air by the purple vine, and without waiting for the middle-aged man to respond, it suddenly turned around and facing the group of people, it flew towards them. Ah! One of the people in the group of guards let out a woeful howl as the green long sword pierced through his chest. He slowly bowed his head to look at the long sword in his stomach. His eyes were filled with disbelief and astonishment. Soon after, his head became askew as he stopped breathing. Heshi held onto the purple abyss vine as she stood on top of the fake mountain. Her silky, satin-like hair danced around in the wind alongside the purple abyss vine, who was swaying about in her hands. The youth's beautiful face showed a serene smile, seeming to be someone who came out of a painting. But at this moment, she looked as if she was Yama who would seize lives, causing people to feel terror. The middle-aged man's look became even more unsightly. The flying sword that was inside the person's stomach hummed several more times before returning back to his hands. He originally thought that this was merely a foundation establishment stage martial artist. Even if the magic weapon in their hands was more powerful and they could skillfully and easily wipe out a group of foundation establishment stage guards. But when they ran into his own group of Meridian stage martial artists, they wouldn't be able to do devastation as they wished. But it was very clear, the fact was that his imaginations and reality were extremely far apart. In the end, who are you? Fear rose in the middle-aged man's heart and he couldn't help but raise his voice and ask. But before he could finish speaking, Heshi suddenly flew into the air and the purple vine in her hands whistled as it came out. All that was heard was a loud pung as the purple vine rolled up 10 or so foundation establishment stage martial artists. Soon after, they were ruthlessly flung into a wall. It was a pity, these foundation establishment stage martial artists weren't at a high rank, so when the purple abyss vine rolled them up, their spiritual energy defense was also eliminated. Without their spiritual energy defense, they became ordinary people. To be flung so ruthlessly against the wall, they didn't even groan before all their bones were shattered as they cleanly died. At this moment, the middle-aged man's facial expression was very alarmed. He was just about to call for everyone to go up together, when suddenly, there was the sound of someone clapping behind him. Soon after, an old man wearing a smiling expression slowly said, "Good skill, good magic weapon." Sure enough, the hero is a young man. It's hard to believe that Genius Doctor is so young. Not only do you have exceptional medical skills, unexpectedly, your cultivation stage is also so excellent. Really makes our group of old men not want to admit to our old age. His words had just been said when Hushi saw the group of guards who were originally surrounding her, including the middle-aged man, all let out revering expressions. One by one, these several people all stepped aside, creating a road. At the end of the road, several tall, male silhouettes walked over. All she saw was a male wearing a gray cloth gown with a long beard. His eyes were fixed on Hushi. They were filled with jealousy and bitter resentment. But it wasn't Dr. Xie. Who was it? There was a 50 or 60-year-old man walking in front of Dr. Xie. His hair and beard was already grizzled and his face had even more pronounced wrinkles. This old man was clearly many years older than Dr. Xie, but the brightness in his eyes was hidden, and from head to toe, the movement of his spiritual energy didn't even leak out a tiny bit. This was clearly an expert. And seeing Dr. Xie's respectfulness when standing behind him, it explained that this person was other courtyard's master and was also most likely the Elder Jiang these people kept mentioning. And behind Elder Jiang and Dr. Xie, there were also two robust males following behind them. Their entire body was filled with muscles, and looking at their cultivation, they had clearly already reached the summit of Meridian stage, far surpassing the guards in this courtyard by quite a bit. Hushi only used her own special ability to examine and could clearly see that this Elder Jiang's cultivation was already at the middle of Gold Core stage. With Hushi's current cultivation stage, any martial artists under Gold Core stage didn't have any importance to her. But if she opposed someone at Gold Core stage, especially someone at the middle of Gold Core stage, the outcome was unknown. Dr. Xie looked towards Hushi. The cold light in his eyes turned around before he chuckled. Elder Jiang, this is the person this subordinate spoke to you about on that day, genius Dr. Xi. Saying this, he looked towards Hushi and insincerely smiled. Genius Dr. Xi, you're wrong. We left a slip of paper at your house with good intentions and thoughts, inviting you over to be an honorable guest. Even if you weren't grateful, how can you sneakily infiltrate our other courtyard and even harm the guards here? Dr. Xie didn't get to finish speaking when Elder Jiang stopped him, insincerely saying, How do you speak Chung? Genius Dr. Xie is the honorable guest we expected. No matter how she came, we still welcome her. Saying this, he beamed at Hushi. His expression and tone as he spoke was full of benevolence without the slightest hint of malice. We're honored by your presence, genius Dr. Xie. Your presence really brings light to my humble other courtyard. The people under my hand didn't recognize genius Dr. Xie and upset your distinguished self. Please don't take offense. Hushi's face also held a mild smile. Her exquisite 5 organs were faintly shone on by the candle light in the dark night. Occasionally she looked innocent and from time to time she looked demonic. The guards here didn't recognize me, so they acted out. Then the people in my B courtyard, they clearly knew, but they still acted out? Elder Jiang was startled. Looking at the youth in front of him, he became absent-minded for a moment. He had heard Dr. Xie say before, the genius doctor, was able to repair fractured bones and mend arteries and veins, was a young man. He now saw with his own eyes and shockingly found that this youth's age was so young, had such a fragile figure and elegant appearance. He clearly had the pretty complexion of a young lady, but his 2 eyes were piercing and frigid, as if one would shiver from just looking because of fright and coldness. Naturally, this feeling only lasted for a split second. After all, Elder Jiang was already a Gold Core expert. He quickly returned back to reality and quietly raised his spiritual energy to oppose this youth's imposing oppression. The expression on his face was still the benevolent old man expression as he smiled. It was merely a giant misunderstanding, that's all. Genius Dr. Xi, there's no need to fuss over such minor matters. Lao Fu merely heard of genius Dr. Xi's exceptional medical skills, so Lao Fu wanted to invite genius Dr. Xi over to compare medical notes with you, a mutual exchange of assistance. Hushi said, Oh, her intonation was an unable-to-be-said carelessness. Compare medical notes? Just in order to call me over to compare medical notes? You find people to kill, burn, and abduct people? Elder Jiang, this way of comparing medical notes is really new, really unusual. Why don't I come to give you some advice? Elder Jiang's eyebrows raised as he chuckled. Oh, there's also this type of matter? Having said this, he seemingly turned around to blame Dr. Xie, who was standing behind him. Chongming, what did you do? Didn't I tell you to go invite genius Dr. Xie? How can you touch as you wish? Dr. Xie's eyes changed. How could he not understand his master's meaning? At once, he looked at Heshi with a face filled with remorse. Genius Dr. Shi, somewhat misunderstood. Originally, we respectfully came to request for you. Who would have thought that the subordinates at your manor were unable to differentiate good from bad? Without distinguishing between right and wrong, they regarded us as bad people. My subordinates were helpless and could only resist. Who would have imagined that when we resisted, they didn't grasp appropriate behavior? Bringing Xiao Li Gunyang was also in order to get genius Dr. Shi to come. We really wish for you to properly apologize. As for those youngsters that didn't know propriety and offended genius Dr. Shi, I already firmly taught them a lesson. Wishing genius Dr. Shi is big and generous, don't bother about them. These words that Dr. Xie spoke were both gentle and forceful, with a degree of propriety. When Elder Jiang heard them, he was immensely pleased. He couldn't help but stroke his beard and smile. If genius Dr. Shi is still dissatisfied, it wouldn't be a bother for me to completely kill those several subordinates in order to help you vent your anger. But if I was to say it, your B courtyard, the people that died were merely just several slaves, nothing more. Dragging them over to sell at the market wouldn't earn you more than a few coins. Genius Dr. Xie, if you feel that you have suffered a loss, I will pay you back 10 times the amount. Correct, nothing more than a few insignificant subordinates. They're only worth a few coins. Heshi slightly evoked the corners of her mouth. Her voice was gloomy and slow. What Elder Jiang said is correct. Having heard what was said, a thread of happiness flashed through Elder Jiang's mind, and at once, he said, since genius Dr. Shi is so fair and reasonable, it would be better to follow me. But he didn't get to finish speaking when he suddenly saw a purple vine fly out from Heshi's wrist. Like lightning, the purple vine divided into 10 in the air, and facing all directions it went out. In the blink of an eye, it penetrated 10 guards' chests. Before they could even come back to reality, it ended their lives. 10 purple vines floated around in the air, resembling a purple barrier. It also emitted a pungent bloody smell. Dr. Xie's face became extremely ugly, and he sternly pointed at Heshi. Shiyu, don't be shameless. We had good intentions and treated you with respect, yet you have the impertinence to raise your hand when Elder Jiang was speaking. Are you impatient of living? The smiling expression on Heshi's face slightly changed. Her finger lightly caressed the purple abyss vine as she sneered at him. What? Didn't you say, it's merely a few insignificant subordinates, nothing more? Not worth any coins? Why are you angry now? Minor matters, be what? You literally slaughtered everyone in her courtyard. If you guys wish, I can go to the marketplace to buy a dozen more and compensate you guys? These words, didn't Elder Jiang just moments ago say them with his own mouth? At this moment, Elder Jiang's benevolent expression finally had a small crack. His expression when looking at Heshi became colder and gloomier. Dr. Xie knew that Elder Jiang had moved to the point of wanting to kill. His heart was carefree as he coldly looked towards Heshi, mockingly saying, having been called genius Dr. Shi, you really think you're a genius doctor? I'm telling you, it's best if you don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Today, if you obediently surrender and pay allegiance to my Jiang manor, we'll forget about this. If you dare to resist, your subordinates' end will be your end. At this moment, Elder Jiang's voice also turned frosty. Merely a few insignificant subordinates, if they died, then they died. It counts as an offer of apology for my subordinates offended genius Dr. Shi. But genius Dr. Shi, clearly understand your situation. Offending my Jiang family wouldn't serve any benefit for you. Having heard what was said, Heshi lowly began to laugh, which slowly changed to arrogant laughter. Oh, I seem to have forgotten to tell you. Just a moment ago, I already visited your Jiang family's laboratory and found your hostages inside. Seeing as you guys were so enthusiastic and hospitable to my Xiao Li, I also gave Elder Jiang a very small gift. By this time, Elder Jiang and Dr. Xie's faces greatly changed. Dr. Xie involuntarily yelled out, "Sun, you visited the underground room? What did you do in there?" He lifted her eyes up. Under her long eyelashes was a pair of glorious and starry eyes, however they contained a cold light. "Didn't do anything. It's nothing more than a fire, that completely burning all the things inside, including those alive but inferior to death medicinal fertilizers and also all the bound black spirit plants. Unexpectedly you burned all our spirit plants." Dr. Xie loudly roared. Because he was extremely angry and distressed, his face warped. "Do you know how much heart's blood we spent, how many generations we had accumulated in order to be able to raise those bound black spirit plants?" Elder Jiang was also angered until his face turned blue. The gaze he looked at He with no longer contained any fake good-naturedness. All that was left was cold-heartedness. "Shiyu, do you really think that this Lao Fu wants your replenishing arteries and veins extinct skill and will just ask for it from your mouth? As long as you're captured and we use a searching soul method on you, you will no longer be able to keep your secret." An unable to tell good from bad, yellow-mouthed child, too. Lao Fu wants you to regret your conduct today. Elder Jiang didn't get to finish speaking when he saw a purple shadow flying towards him. Indeed, this was He directly mounting a sneak attack. Elder Jiang coldly snorted and disdainfully said, "Nothing more than an insignificant foundation establishment stage martial artist, yet wants to sneak attack Lao Fu. Simply overestimating one's capabilities." Finished speaking, he didn't even take out a magic weapon. His large, elegant gown suddenly waved. All one heard was, "Pa," and he had ruthlessly threw out the purple vine that was heading towards him. The strength Elder Jiang used to throw was enormous. The purple vine was thrown very far away and one after another, they all hit a wall. Even the wall had a small spider web-like crack in it. Elder Jiang felt very proud of himself in his heart, but he suddenly heard Dr. Xie's alarmed shout, "Elder Jiang, save me!" His face greatly changed. Turning his head, he witnessed Dr. Xie, who already had 3 or 4 purple vines twisting around him, hoisting him high up in the air and flying in He's direction. This youngster, the purple vines just then were simply part of the plan to create a diversion. Involuntarily yelled out, he lost control of how loud his voice was. Yellow-mouthed child. Something used to call satirical, ignorant children birthday update, 3/4, nearly there. Fun fact about myself. In my home, I actually speak Cantonese, not Mandarin. The actual person she wanted to attack was Xie Chongming. He saw that Dr. Xie was right in front of He, and He had already picked up a long sword infused with cold light. Elder Jiang's complexion became extremely unsightly. With a loud roar, he threw himself over. "You dare?" But before he fell down, he heard shwa 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 shwai sounds. Immediately following that, Dr. Xie let out a mournful howl. His entire body resembled a drum. Dropping on the floor with a thump, he incessantly rolled around. Yes, exactly like a drum. Because the current Dr. Xie had already had his 4 limbs chopped off by the identical vines, all that was left over was a head attached to an upper body. His arms and legs were laid to the side on the floor. His fingers had already began to turn blue, but they were still moving around neurotically. He slowly walked up to Dr. Xie, who was ceaselessly shouting. She smiled innocently and softly. "Dr. Xie, when you let people kill wet Nurse Chin and take out her internal organs, were you happy?" "Oh, I think you were definitely happy." She let out a light sigh. "Therefore, I don't mind letting you feel even happier." The words had just come out when the long sword in her hand flew out like a phantom, heading towards Dr. Xie's face to say hello. Dr. Xie's eyes resembled death. They were full of alarm and despair. Shortly, he no longer had eyes. His face didn't have a nose, ears, eyebrows, and eyes anymore. He still had a mouth, but his mouth no longer had a tongue. He couldn't make any noises. But it didn't matter, he still had his ears, he could still hear sounds. He also had his consciousness. The current pain on his body tortured him to the point of hovering between life and death. He regained the long sword, but she didn't bother to wipe the bloodstain on it. Rather, she directly threw the long sword away. At last, she finally looked upon Dr. Xie. Her voice was soft and she had a tender expression as she said, "Although you killed Wet Nurse Chen and tortured Xiao Li, I've still decided that you can't die too easily. Now, you are unable to see, talk, walk, or do anything. But with a martial artist's valiant body, you won't die so easily either. You can't even kill yourself. You will suffer this hellish torture every day and every night for a long time, incapable of freeing yourself or escape. I trust that you'll feel extremely happy about this feeling." On the floor, Dr. Xie, who couldn't even be said to have a body anymore, frantically trembled. He twisted and turned, but nobody spared him a glance anymore and nobody cared about his life or death anymore. To Heshi, he was already a dead man. Wet Nurse Chen's hatred has already been revenged. To Elder Jiang, Xie Chongming, having lost both his hands and feet and being unable to look or see, had already lost all his value. He was no longer worthy of paying any attention to. It was just that everyone turned speechless for half a day after seeing Heshi's ruthless methods. Clearly they're nothing more than 16 or 17 years old, didn't expect that when he cut off someone's 4 limbs and removed their eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, his expression still wouldn't have the slightest change. No, his face still carried a breathtaking smile. This youth really is too terrifying. Even Elder Jiang had these thoughts. He originally wanted to attract him to his side, but he retrieved these thoughts. A thread of fear rose in his heart. If this youngster was allowed to mature, perhaps even he wouldn't be his match. So, after he obtained the extinct skill of replenishing arteries and veins, he must completely destroy this youth. Thinking up to here, Elder Jiang took a deep breath. His cold gaze looked towards Heshi as he slowly said, "Looks like you won't choose to surrender and pay allegiance to my Jiang family?" Heshi held onto the purple abyss vine again and lightly laughed. "Old fart, I dare to surrender and pay allegiance. Do you dare to receive it? Just based on some Luisi Jiang family, you want me to surrender and pay allegiance? Don't dream too big. In this world, the people who can make me obedient and surrender haven't been born yet." The fury in Elder Jiang's eyes flashed as he coldly said, "Good, very good. Nothing more than an insignificant foundation establishment stage, and one's way of speaking really isn't small. Originally, I still wanted to give you face, but seeing as you're unable to tell good from bad, I won't stand on ceremony." When he finished speaking, a cyan flag suddenly appeared in his hand. This flag's appearance resembled the black flag Feng Yunjing carried inside the white fog, but it to be a lot less imposing when compared to that black flag. When the cyan flag appeared in Elder Jiang's hand, it was only the size of his palm, but when spiritual energy was poured in, it suddenly grew in size. Elder Jiang lowly roared, "Thousand Wind Blade!" The cyan flag flew up and suddenly swirled up into a tornado, completely encircling Heshi. Once she was trapped inside the tornado, Heshi felt an immense pressure. This tornado was actually formed with countless wind blades, and every wind blade had the spiritual pressure and attack force of a gold core stage martial artist. Inside the hurricane, Heshi had no way to move, she could only passively defend. Under these straitened circumstances, her body quickly developed numerous bruises of all shapes and sizes. And this was under the purple abyss vine protecting her at full force. If not, she wouldn't have merely received bruises. Seeing Heshi's sorry figure inside the tornado, Elder Jiang couldn't help but sneer at her. "How are things? Do you know the distance between Foundation Establishment Stage and Gold Core Stage now? Did you really think you could strut around just because you had a little bit of skill? Today you will learn that there are mountains beyond mountains, people beyond people, too." While saying this, Elder Jiang's hands raised and a large concentration of spiritual energy poured into the cyan flag. Quickly, the wind blades surrounding Heshi picked up their speed by a few degrees. Although Heshi didn't receive any serious injuries, the purple abyss vine was cut everywhere because it was protecting her. Occasionally, purple plant juice would drip down. Heshi's heart gradually became anxious, and in her consciousness, she chid at the purple abyss vine. She wanted it to first protect itself, not to use its own spiritual energy to protect herself. But for the first time, the purple abyss vine was determined to resist against her command. No matter how badly it got cut up by the wind blades, it continued to protect Heshi. Even if its vines were breaking off, root by root. It didn't consent to allowing her receive any mortal injuries. Elder Jiang laughed out loud. Don't struggle. This pure wind flag, when paired with the 1,000 wind blade, is actually my unique skill. As long as you're trapped inside, even high-level gold core stage martial artists wouldn't be able to even think about coming out. You're merely an insignificant foundation establishment stage youngster. Do you really think you can rely on some magical plant, with unknown origins, and be able to get out of the 1,000 wind blade? Don't dream anymore. I advise you to hand over the replenishing arteries and veins extinct method now. This way I may still give you a way out. If you continue refusing to listen to reason, I can also beat you into a useless person and take out the things I want from your brain. By then, you better not regret. 1. Stand on ceremony. He won't be nice anymore. 2. Mountains beyond mountains, people beyond people, there's always someone more talented. The information obtained from the soul-searching technique was guaranteed to be true, but there was a 90% chance it would be damaged. But unless it was absolutely essential, Elder Jiang didn't want to use this method. Elder Jiang was howling with laughter. His heart was content. But he suddenly heard a loud sound, ping. The hurricane originally spinning around Heshi suddenly, violently began to shake. Soon after, a crack even appeared. A childlike voice carrying some mischievousness started laughing. Smelly old man, this tornado can't be broken from the inside, but it can be from the outside easily. The voice just came out when Heshi came out of the crack, with a body full of wounds, carrying a purple abyss vine riddled with scars. Following Heshi leaving, the 1,000 wind blades that made up the tornado quickly disappeared into thin air. And a blood-covered small dragon hung by Heshi's side. Facing Heshi, it mischievously laughed. Lauda, I already tidied up that other group. Hi. I didn't pull your back leg. The light in Heshi's eyes dimmed a bit as she crouched down to carry the little golden dragon. It didn't know when her hand had so much medicinal powder, but she lightly spread it on the fierce wounds on its flesh, softly saying, Didn't I tell you to run when there was danger? The medicinal powder was spread across its body, causing the little golden dragon's aching body to tremble. But in spite of this, it still willfully laughed. Lauda, you're so brave and fierce. I am your Xiao Di, how can I run away? Isn't that losing your Lauda's face? Hee, no matter what, it's Ben Zun. Because I was undaunted by the danger, I was able to damage that trash tornado. Loud, you owe me a favor. Got it. Heshi used gauze to wrap up its wounds before softly saying, Obediently enter my space, and when Lauda teaches a lesson to these bad people, I'll make delicious food for you. The little golden dragon's eyes brightened. Rubbing against Heshi's wrist, he didn't hesitate to go back inside her space. Elder Jiang's complexion became grave and avaricious. The way he looked at Heshi seemed as if he was looking at a monster. Didn't expect that you not only had a 9-tailed spirit fox, but you also had a golden dragon. Hee, if I can obtain the golden dragon, 9-tailed spirit fox, and the replenishing arteries and veins extinct method, don't even talk about joining the doctor association. Even if it was returning to my family, it would be an easy feat. How could an ordinary person think that an insignificant foundation establishment stage martial artist would have so many treasures on their body? Ha, my being able to capture you today is extremely lucky. When he finished speaking, the cool breeze flag was once again taken out. Rising into the air, it also simultaneously picked up dust. At the same time, Elder Jiang also flew up in the air. Arrogantly looking at Heshi, he disdainfully said, You thought that just because you escaped the 1,000 wind blade once, you would be able to escape from my hands. Hee, if I can activate the 1,000 wind blade the first time, I can activate it a second time. Moreover, this time's 1,000 wind blade will be even stronger than last time's. After a moment, Hu was heard and the cool breeze flag began to violently shake, swirling up an immense sandstorm. This time, it won't only be dust and tree leaves. Even the tiles and bricks on the house will be picked up into the hurricane. So much so that even the hill shook and swayed. Heshi's complexion was grave and a blue and red long sword appeared in her hand. She got this sword from Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory. It was the sword that fit her the most now, Li Shui's sword. It had both the water attribute and fire attribute. But before Heshi could move the sword, the purple abyss vine in her hand seemed to have not listened to her command and abruptly rose up into the air. 1. Shaodi younger brother. Little Purple? Heshi let out a cry of surprise. With all her might she prayed to the gods, wanting to bring Little Purple back. But the purple vine seemed determined, completely ignoring Heshi's order. It knocked against the cyan flag, releasing the hurricane. The only sound was pung pung ping, repeatedly, loudly, sounding out. Under Heshi's alarmed gaze, she saw the thick purple vine fly high up then come crashing back down. Following that, thick purple juice flowed down the side of Heshi's leg. Soon after, a cyan flag had been rolled up, swaying and wobbling. It was brought in front of Heshi. Heshi could perceive that the purple abyss vine wanted to help improve her mood. Its scattered leaves softly swayed around, seeming to be both, taking credit for its achievement and asking for forgiveness. Clearly it had been cut everywhere by the cool breeze flag's hurricane, so miserable. But Heshi could sense the purple abyss vine's consciousness, very happy, very cheerful. Can help master, really is too great. Can punish the scoundrel that caused Dan Dan to cry, really is too great. Heshi let out a soft breath and no longer attempted to reissue the flame. Instead she took the cool breeze flag from the purple abyss vine and extended her hand to softly touch it. Little Purple, thank you, Heshi slowly said, but in the future, you're not allowed to disobey my command and act on your own initiative. Otherwise, I'll remove our master and pet contract. Do you hear me? The purple vine shook and its leaves started drooping down. Feeling wronged and trying to curry favor, it rubbed against Heshi's wrist. Heshi's pressed down on her forehead. This group of fellows really didn't let people be worry-free. These fellows really let people love dearly and take pity on them. Her voice deepened. Youngster, you can rest assured. I'll definitely make the old fools who hurt Shaoli and you guys pay the price. You guys have to have some faith in this, Lauda. Do you understand? Finished speaking, her fair wrist moved and the purple abyss vine quickly returned to her space. And her deeply cold gaze looked towards the distant Elder Zhang's ugly complexion. At this moment, Elder Zhang's complexion was extremely unsightly. He didn't expect his own cool breeze flag to be stolen by that purple devil plant. Although the cool breeze flag wasn't the most difficult to deal with magic weapon on him, this type of shame from being hit by the younger generation caused his killing intent towards Heshi to deepen. Thinking up to here, Elder Jiang quickly took out a long sword, sneering, "You think that just because Lao Fu doesn't have the cool breeze flag anymore I won't be able to resist you anymore? Simply is indulging in wishful thinking. Qian Zi sword, attack for me." After his words sounded out, the flying sword suddenly transformed into thousands of reflections of swords and began going towards Heshi. Soon the sword reflections flew in front of Heshi, but her face still had the ice-cold smile and she didn't show a bit of movement to resist it. At this moment, silver needles appeared on her hand and quickly entered each of the major acupuncture points. Heshi's movements were extremely fast and her expression was extremely concentrated. Even if the flying sword appeared in front of her and cut her clothes, she still seemed to lack any awareness. A moment later, the blood-stained youth, in the middle of all the sword reflections, lifted her head up. Using a cold voice, she slowly said, "You want my replenishing arteries and veins extinct method? Good, I'll give it to you. When you arrive in hell, I'll personally roast it for you." After saying this, the spiritual energy in her body suddenly rose up and a burst of imposing manners surged up and came out. She painstakingly didn't move the protective cover and pushed out all the reflections of the swords surrounding her. The 1,000 reflections of the flying swords all turned back into one. But they didn't return to Elder Jiang. Instead, with a purring sound, it fell on the ground and lost the luster it previously had. Elder Jiang looked towards the youth in front of him. His foot stumbled as he kept walking backwards. His face was filled with shock. Gold core? How can you have the smell of a gold core martial artist? Little demon, in the end, what are you? What did you do just now? He just saw the youth's fiery gaze as the spiritual energy in his body frantically swelled and inky black, satiny hair flew around without wind. The entire person emitted an imposing power, pressing down on him. Where did they resemble a mere foundation establishment stage martial artist? They were clearly genuinely at gold core stage. In reality, at this moment, Hishi wasn't feeling too well. Just now, she used the silver needles to prick her acupuncture points, expanding her channels. In fact, this was a type of method that ignited the dantian and promoted strength. Hishi had used this method in her past life before. It was just that, at that time, she didn't have spiritual power. What was ignited was actually inner power inside her dantian. Using this method, one could quickly promote one's body, but the cost was burning one's vitality. In her previous life, each minute she spent in this force state, she exchanged approximately 1 year of her life. And naturally, at this moment, this method of igniting her dantian's spiritual power also needed compensation. But, in order for wet nurse Chen and Xiao Li's revenge, Hishi threw caution to the wind and she couldn't change anything now. Elder Jiang suddenly recovered from his shock and the spiritual power in his body rushed up. Qianzi's sword, which had originally fallen to the side, hummed and rose up and rushed towards Hishi. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that Hishi's spiritual power was still unstable and kill him when he was unprepared. But what caused Elder Jiang to become surprised was that when the Qianzi sword touched Hishi's side, it suddenly got catapulted away. Unexpectedly, it didn't even get to damage the spiritual power-powered protective cover over Hishi. It was the same as Gold Core stage. It was obvious to him that at this moment, Hishi's spiritual power was far more powerful than his. At this moment, during Elder Jiang's bewildered state, the corners of Hishi's mouth lifted up into a ridiculing smile. She faintly said, "So the Thousand Wind Blade is just like this, nothing more." At this moment, Hishi was scattering the cool breeze flag, the same way Elder Jiang did when he was releasing the Thousand Wind Blade in her Sea of Knowledge. Zijin Palace Hall's Maha Inheritance, Secret Duplication Method. When she advanced to Gold Core stage, this magic, which she had recently learned, began to automatically work. Originally, it seemed to be the large and formidable Thousand Wind Blade, deconstructing and recombining, one by one in her mind. It was no longer a secret. When she finished speaking, Hishi's mind moved and the cool breeze flag in her hand flew out. As Elder Jiang's reaction was still catching up, the cool breeze flag became an engulfing sky storm, advancing towards Elder Jiang. What? Thousand Wind Blade. This can't be. Elder Jiang let out a cry of surprise, practically dumbstruck. This is actually my Jiang family's own skill. How can you use it? Moreover, that cool breeze flag had already been used by me. How can you use it? Elder Jiang let out furious shouts as the twisting hurricane in front of him grew larger and larger, eventually enveloping him inside it. Inside the hurricane, sounds of Elder Jiang's angry questions, depressed groans, as well as the sound of the wind blades cutting his clothing and flesh. But this scene continued to happen until a violent boom was suddenly heard in the center of the storm. Immediately, the entire hurricane exploded open. Leaves, sand, and dust settled on the ground as the hurricane gradually faded away. Lacking strength, the cool breeze flag also fell down into Hishi's hands. Elder Jiang's eyes were blood red as he rigidly watched Hishi, who was nearby. His eyes were filled with hatred and unspeakable fear. At this moment, his complexion was pale and there were bloodstains on his mouth. His clothes were all torn and his body was filled with cuts from the wind blades. How could he still possess the relaxation he had previously? It was extremely clear that in order to eliminate the Thousand Wind Blade, he paid a price. Naturally, Hishi didn't expect a small tornado would be able to get rid of this old fart. But she faintly laughed. "Old fool, The feeling of being injured by your own magic weapons isn't bad, right? Elder Jiang became so angered, his body shook. He suddenly took out some medicine pills and stuffed it in his mouth, fiercely looking at Heshi. Did you think that the thousand-wind blade flag was my most lethal magic weapon? You've merely learned a bit of superficial knowledge, yet you dare to strut around in front of me. Right now, I'm going to use my unique skill to dismember your body, you shameless youngster. If you have the ability, use my tricks again to come see me. He just finished speaking when the pressure from spiritual power in his body began pressing down harder. And inside his hand, a twinkling thunder light, golden longsword appeared. When he waved his hand, the sound of thunder suddenly echoed from the long sword. Thunder and wind rushing movement. Smelly youngster, drop dead for me? Momentarily, the entire desolate residence shook and countless pieces of clay and sand picked up in the hurricane and headed towards Heshi. At the same time, a clap of thunder and lightning which caused people's blood to run cold sounded out. Elder Jiang had the wind and thunder dual spiritual roots. Although it couldn't be compared to heavenly spiritual roots, in Miluo continent, it could be considered a rarely seen good attribute. For him to get to today's achievement, he had used countless precious spiritual pills, and adding on 100 years of bitter cultivation, he had achieved gold core stage with great difficulty. If he lost to this yellow-mouthed child in front of him, what did his 100 years of payment count as? Heshi had been enveloped inside the hurricane. Her spiritual protective cover was constantly being blown by the wind, causing it to become unstable and crack before maintaining itself again. Heshi's expression was extremely calm. Her two eyes distributed warm rays of golden lights, and in the blink of an eye, she moved towards Elder Jiang. When the wind and thunder rushing movement had been completely finished, Heshi's mouth curved up into a dazzling smile. A moment later, when she flipped her palm up, a wind and thunder-infused long sword appeared in her hand. Following that, in front of Elder Jiang's astonished gaze, Heshi resolutely waved the long sword. For a moment, hurricane and hurricane bumped, thunder and lightning tangled together and rumbled. The entire courtyard seemed as if it could no longer withstand the battle, and the wall angrily collapsed. And a moment later, the hurricane which was originally attacking Heshi seemed to have been swallowed. Slowly it became weaker and melted away. At the same time, the earth-shaking thunder and lightning hurricane turned around and headed to attack Elder Jiang. Not possible. This isn't possible. This is absolutely not possible. Elder Jiang's eyes were filled with fright and despair. The thunder and wind-rushing movement was their Jiang family's unique skill. Even his own family's younger generation could only learn this secret method through word of mouth. But why could this youth learn it today? In the end, who was she? A moment later, he heard Heshi's clear and ridiculing voice sound out from a nearby place. Didn't you say that I could learn your unique skill? Thunder and wind rushing movement, in the end, it's just this and nothing more. Elder Jiang let out unresigned shouts. Following this, he was completely engulfed by the hurricane produced by wind and thunder rushing movement. Soon after, there were his bellows and the sound of his body being torn apart by the hurricane. This was his unique skill. Now it had been completely exerted on his body. This wasn't only the torture on the body, it also ruined one's spirit. After the hurricane, Elder Jiang's body was similar to a piece of cloth. With a bump, he fell down on the floor and spit out a big mouthful of blood. There wasn't an intact piece of flesh on his body anymore. With a speed visible to the naked eye, his appearance and skin quickly aged. Heshi held onto a long sword in her hand. Advancing forward, she arrogantly looked at him. Out of fear, Elder Jiang instinctively wiggled his body, wanting to recoil. He repeatedly mumbled, "Forgive me. Forgive me. I am Jiang family's person. I can give you countless benefits. If you kill me, Elder Jiang certainly won't let you off. I already reported the matter of your replenishing arteries and veins method to my family. As long as you don't kill me, I'll conceal you from my family." Heshi's mouth curved up into a shallow smile. Her pretty facial features were outstanding, But she also had the characteristics of a youth's immaturity. But a moment later, the long sword in her hand whooshed out. It resolutely broke Elder Jiang's dantian. Naturally, I'll let you live. I'll let you live in pain for a while more. If not, how can you bear the pains you put onto my family's Shaoli? Elder Jiang let out a heart-tearing and lung-splitting howl. His entire body rapidly aged, his skin wrinkled, and his originally white skin turned whiter. Even a few of his teeth fell out. With his dantian shattered, his cultivation was considered gone and he became an ordinary person. An ordinary person who was over 100 years old, who was old and weak, who wanted to obtain this. But unfortunately, Elder Jiang had eaten countless talented treasures, so his vitality was difficult to lessen. He had clearly become an old man who was over 100, but he hadn't died. He could only painfully and bitterly look towards Heshi. At this moment, Heshi couldn't stand it anymore. The long sword in her hand dropped with a pung sound to the ground and her knees turned soft. Kneeling to the ground, she spit out a mouthful of blood. The silver needles in her body flew out and her dantian finally stopped igniting. Lauda, are you all right? The little golden dragon raced out of her space and quickly began to support Heshi's body. Dan also made his way out of her space and began weeping by Heshi's side. Mother, what's wrong with you? Don't scare Dan. As he was talking, he was also sending spiritual chi to Heshi's body. When Dan's spiritual chi and Heshi's entered her body, it quickly allowed her ignited dantian to feel much better. Heshi's complexion was still deathly pale, but she extended her hand to lightly rub Dan's head. Be good Dan, nothing is wrong with mother. Dan held Heshi's hand and checked all over it, several times, before confirming that his beloved mother was truly all right. Then he began to cry again. Mother, don't scare Dan. Dan doesn't want to see you wounded nor see you spitting out blood. Bad mother, you threw Dan back into your space and got injured. In the future, Dan will no longer trust you. What? Heshi could coolly and elegantly laugh when a group of martial artists was being beat, but towards Dan's sobbing, she lacked any means to. She knitted her eyebrows, feeling a headache. To the side, the little golden dragon watched the good play. Only when he saw Heshi was helpless to do anything, he walked forward to say, Dan, the bad people who injured Lauda aren't dead yet. Call Little Purple, let's properly entertain them together. The sound of a child's cry. Upon hearing those words, Dan stopped crying and his short legs slowly walked towards Elder Jiang's side. His round, small, pig-like body jumped onto Elder Jiang's stomach, shouting, Villain, you harmed mother. I'll kill you. The weight of Dan pressing down on Elder Jiang caused his eyes to rotate to the white parts and caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Heshi stopped the several fellows, laughing helplessly. Don't play anymore, he's so weak right now, he won't be able to bear you guys tossing him around. If we let him die so easily, won't that be too convenient for him? Lauda, do you have any good means? The little golden dragon excitedly jumped around in the air. We must let him properly experience pain. Elder Jiang raised his head. His eyes were filled with despair and hatred as he loudly roared at Heshi. My Jiang family won't let you off. Before he could finish yelling, copious amounts of medicinal powders appeared in Heshi's hands, which she then proceeded to sprinkle over his wounds. Suddenly, Elder Jiang, who had originally been at his last dying breath, began to violently shout as he rolled around on the floor. And what was even more terrifying was that his skin began to fall off in pieces. It resembled the snow-white lime on a wall that had been cracked and was falling off, exposing his bloody red internal flesh. The little golden dragon turned left and right in the air as he looked at the main culprit in such a miserable state, feeling indescribably excited. Lauda, what type of medicine is this? Very ferocious. Free and unfettered powdered medicine. Heshi carried the confused Dan, covering his eyes so he couldn't see the bloody scene as she explained to the little golden dragon. First, your skin falls off in clumps. Next, it's your body's flesh. But even after all his skin and flesh had fallen off, he still won't die. Only until the rotting spreads to his heart and brain can he die. This type of torture will last approximately 12 days and nights. He can only endure the suffering, helplessly looking as he slowly inches towards death. Really is a pity, he's merely a common person now. I'm afraid that after a bit of pain torture, his body may not be able to endure anymore. But it's sufficient. Sufficient enough to offset all the pain he set upon Xiao Li's body. It's also sufficient enough to let wet Nurse Chin to be in peace in the 9 springs. Finished speaking, He took back all the magic weapons on the floor, including Elder Zhang's flying sword. Then she ordered the purple abyss vine. Little Purple, carefully search through this desolate residence. I want to ensure that, aside from these 2 old fellows, there isn't any living mouths. After approximately the time it took to burn a stick of incense, this desolate residence, located in the eastern outskirts of Yanjing City, suddenly let out a violent boom. Completely collapsing, it became ruins, enveloped in dense, scary air. Inside the ruins, aside from a monster that lacked all 4 limbs, a nose, mouth, ears, and eyes, as well as a bloody person who howled in pain, there weren't any other creatures visible. As a result of this place being remote and it being late at night, nobody discovered this. Only until the 3rd day, a white-clothed male appeared in front of these ruins. Looking at the squirming freak with an incomplete body and the incessantly wiggling and screaming mincemeat on the floor, he couldn't help but knit his handsome eyebrows, exposing a suspicious expression. Eastern outskirts of Yanjing, he shouldn't have found the wrong place. Clearly it was the day to deliver the goods, but how come there wasn't a shadow of any human beings? Furthermore, even the house had turned into ruins. In the end, what happened? Looking at the monster lacking all 4 limbs who was wiggling at him, it seemed to want to convey something. The white-clothed male expressed a loathing expression on his face. A ball of fire condensed in his hands and he threw it towards the monster without limbs. All that was heard was, "Chi-la," before that wiggling monster turned into ashes, disappearing without a trace. The white-clothed male brushed the dust off his clothes and pondered for a moment before a bag appeared in his hands and the shouting piece of mincemeat was wrapped inside. In Jinling Kingdom, the 4 largest clans, Murong, Nailin, Ouyang and Huangfu, were all on par with each other. In Songming Kingdom, Feng family was unrivaled, they were an outstanding and large family. In the entire Songming Kingdom, from the royal family to the sects, nobody dared to bother them. Even in Miluo Continent, one of the 4 biggest sects, Lu Li sect, was a part of their property. Feng family's official residence was located on Songming Kingdom's Wuliang Mountain. Or, it would be better to say that Wuliang Mountain was entirely considered Feng family's property. The ancestors of Feng family built their paradise in the area with the most dense spiritual qi. They used the blackened phoenix soul as the family's defense and attacker. It could be said that living on the mountain was both dangerous and favorable. It was easily able to be guarded and difficult to attack, making it a beneficial place to cultivate. And this paradise was comparable to the magnificence of Immortal Palace's pavilions and kiosks with its engraved corridors and painted halls. But what was most rare was that one didn't even need to meditate cross-legged. By just breathing in, rich spiritual power would circulate inside the body. Being inside was like being inside the 9th level of heaven, outside the world of immortals, letting people wish to linger and forget about going home. So it's surprised that the entire cultivation world scrambled for the chance to be able to enter Feng family. So much so that, even if they became a manservant in Feng family, they would be bringing honor to one's ancestors and become admired by everyone. At this moment, instead the study of the main building of Feng family, a black-clothed male with grave facial expressions was just saying something to a middle-aged male. Naturally, that black-clothed and grave-faced youth was Feng family's young master, Feng Yunjing. Although nowadays Feng Yunjing was in power regarding major events, he still needed the clan elders and his father, Feng Tianba's, decision. Regarding this time's loss at Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, he needed to have an explanation for Feng family's elders. Hearing Feng Tianba's words, the image of Hishi's elegant and delicate expression flashed through his mind before he quickly denied it. It couldn't be him, that person was difficult to deal with, but was only a foundation establishment stage martial artist. Even if they received Zijin Palace Hall's inheritance, what did he count as? He couldn't have obtained Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory. Feng Tianba also quickly turned his thoughts back to Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory. His voice was deep as he said, seeing as Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory can exchange owners, an expert must have been the one who took control. Our Feng family doesn't need to compete against them in the future. As for that spring tree, honored Sir Mu Hua already said he thought of an alternative method. Our Feng family's secret ministry is planning to plunder. You don't have to worry anymore. When he heard what he said, Feng Yunjing nodded his head. Immediately after, he knitted his eyebrows, but this time, Lian Ying was unable to obtain Zijin Palace Hall's inheritance. Heng, useless person. Feng Tianba coldly snorted, then calmly said, how many years have we been planning, how much resources have been spent on her, how many preparations had been made for her for this trip to the Sealed Dragon Domain? Clearly success should have been assured, didn't expect that she was defeated under a foundation establishment stage youngster's hand and even acted so hot-headedly in 100 Herb Mist. Practically is losing all of Feng family's face. If it wasn't for the sake of her master's face, I would have thrown her out of Feng family a long time ago. As Feng Tianba was speaking, anger was rolling over his face in bursts. Recalling the scene, outside of the secret territory, of Feng Lianying's bare body, he was itching to beat this daughter to death. Originally he wanted to wed her to Nan Gongyu, firmly fastening him. But it seems like now, these thoughts must be dropped. This trash that can't be seen in public, Nan Gongyu's eyes are higher than the top, how could she possibly meet his gaze? Speaking of the youngster that stole the Zijin Palace Hall inheritance, Feng Tianba deeply sighed and then handed a jade book to Feng Yunjing. Lowering his voice, he told him, I'm afraid this youngster isn't very simple, you take a look. Feng Yunjing's face was puzzled. Taking the jade book, his expression was deep. A moment later, Feng Yunjing's face returned to his regular, well, without ripples face. Then he let out an astonished expression, lowly saying, able to completely cure Ouyang Haoshuan's fractured meridians and even his cultivation level was reinstated to how it was previously? Genius Dr. Shiyu father, are you certain they're the same person? Feng Tianba pursued his lips. From what you've said, that youth, Shiyu, received Zijin Palace Hall's inheritance. That in itself proves that he has medical skills. Adding on to that are his deeds in 100 Herb Mist, he clearly has much higher medical skills compared to Feng Lianying. On the world there aren't many brilliant doctors. Yet it just happens that two suddenly appear, and both are surnamed Shi? Moreover, I also heard that the genius doctor Shi who cured Ouyang Haoshuan was a 17 or 18-year-old youth. Therefore, I'm 90% certain that this youth called Shiyu is the genius doctor Shi that's caused the medical world to go crazy. Talking up to here, Feng Tianba's gaze turned serene. Yunjing, although this time's operation at the secret territory was a fail, you can't say we didn't gain anything from it. Regarding this Shiyu, you must clarify for me, if he truly has such godly methods, our Feng family needs to rush to hold him inside-out hands. A blaze burned in Feng Yunjing's eyes before quickly disappearing, and immediately after, he seemed to have thought of something. His expression was faint as he lowered his voice and asked, but father, how should we deal with Nan Gongyu? His relationship with that Shiyu appears to be excellent. For that Shiyu he didn't hesitate to clash with me. Feng Yunjing himself didn't know where his thoughts were. He found out that Shiyu could possibly be a woman, and Nan Gongyu and Shiyu's intimacy was all concealed. Naturally, Feng Tianba thought Nan Gongyu's favor of Shiyu was due to his medical skills, so his expression was grave as he said, Nan Gongyu, if you can avoid, then avoid. By all means, you must not go and deliberately provoke him. He isn't someone you can bother right now. Having heard what he said, Feng Yunjing's complexion sunk and his heart was filled with refusal. Nan Gongyu was at nascent soul stage, he was also at nascent soul stage. And adding on to that was the numerous, difficult to deal with, magical weapons owned by Feng family. Feng Yunjing didn't believe that he would lose to him. Why did father say he was someone he couldn't provoke? Feng Yunjing ground his teeth. Father, don't speak, he only has this bit of skill. Even if he's very difficult to deal with, you're his life-saving benefactor. Don't tell me he can bite the hand that feeds him? Why should we need to avoid him like a taboo? Well, without Ripple's face, poker face. When he heard what was said, Feng Tianba became startled. Then he shook his head. Life-saving benefactor? He hadn't finished speaking when his voice turned mocking halfway through. Feng Yunjing was about to ask when Feng Tianba immediately waved his hand. All you need to know is to not provoke Nangongyu, it'll be alright then. Regarding Shiyu's matters, secretly investigate them. If you're certain, quietly make contact with him. With our Feng family status, as long as he's sensible, I don't believe a mere foundation establishment stage martial artist won't be tempted. As long as Shiyu is willing to submit himself to Feng family, even Nangongyu can't do anything, right? Feng Yunjing ground his teeth. But father, nowadays Nangongyu is becoming stronger and won't consent to join us by marriage. I'm afraid he'll become a big worry for our Feng family in the future. Okay, you don't have to worry about this matter anymore. Feng Tianba waved his hands, preventing him from asking any more questions. If there's nothing else, withdraw first. Feng Yunjing's expression fluctuated, but seeing Feng Tianba's dignified expression, he swallowed any remaining words he had and quickly left the room. After Feng Yunjing retreated, approximately the time it took to burn a stick of incense later, a white figure appeared in the doorway of Feng Tianba's study. This person was precisely the white-clothed male who appeared at Jiang family's other courtyard. At this moment, he was carrying a bag. The bag seemed to have something incessantly squirming inside it, so much so that you could even faintly hear someone's hoarse yells coming from within. When this person entered the study, he humbly saluted Feng Tianba. With a lowered voice, he reported, "Clan head, the situation has changed. The underground testing pharmacy in Yanjing's eastern outskirts seemed to have been destroyed by someone. Subordinate used spiritual skills to investigate, and all of the bound black spirit plants have been completely destroyed. There's also this." The white-clothed male shook the bag and it loosened slightly. The bag began to open when the thick smell of rotting blood assaulted one's senses. Accompanying the smell was the sound of a hoarse and broken voice. A mincemeat skeleton appeared in front of their eyes. All the internal organs and blood in the skeleton had filled up the bag. But what was strange was that this person had already turned into this weird monster, but that mutilated skull was completely intact. Furthermore, it could even let out such pained howls. This scene was truly too terrifying and strange. Feng Tianba shook for half a day before saying in disbelief, "This is Elder Jiang?" Once Feng Yunjing exited Feng Tianba's study, his face turned gloomy. That beautiful yet icy appearance kept flashing through his eyes. But that face was peach-colored towards Nangongyu. It was somewhat prettier than this immortal manor's exquisite jade flower trees. From childhood, Feng Yunjing got whatever he wanted. Which woman didn't stick to him like a housefly when she saw him? Only this Shiyu. Refusing his invitation 3 times, even facing him with a long sword. If it wasn't for Nangongyu supporting her, she was a mere foundation establishment stage martial artist. Where would one find the courage to refuse him? Who would have the capability to refuse him? The secret desired hope and envy at the bottom of his heart burned, causing his grave and stern expression to distort. Standing in the middle of a pavilion, Feng Yunjing tightly clenched his fist around a stone pillar, mumbling to himself, "Shiyu, you're destined to be mine, unable to escape my palm. When I kill Nangongyu, you'll become my person. I'll have you kneeling in front of me, begging me to love you. Young master, you've returned." Suddenly, a tender and soft female's voice interrupted Feng Yunjing's thoughts. Soon after, a woman full of gold and jade with beautiful and elegant features threw herself into Feng Yunjing's embrace. "Young master, this time you left for such a long time. Yenna really missed you." When a fragrant and overly sweet woman threw herself into his embrace, It should be warm, fragrant, and jade. But Feng Yunjing suddenly thought of something. When that person neared him, the faint smell of herbal medicine hit him in the face. There wasn't any of the woman's beauty nor pampering. Instead, it was an uncontrollable and strong feeling of indifference. Suddenly, Feng Yunjing felt as if the smell of cosmetics disgusted him. He shook off the woman that threw herself into his embrace and coldly said, "Go away. Seeing you makes me feel nauseous." Finished speaking, his figure disappeared. The woman who had been left inside the pavilion first stared blankly, then her pretty face warped. Previously, she was a servant girl in Feng family. Because her appearance was outstanding, she was chosen to be Feng Yunjing's personal servant girl. Being young master's servant girl meant that inevitably, there would be a day she would become young master's woman. Chen Yenner had always been arrogant. She was the prettiest and cleverest woman by young master's side. Although young master's heart was cold, he would occasionally treat her warmly. But today she clearly saw loathing in young master's eyes. Chen Yenner angrily punched the stone pillar, mumbling fragments to herself. Shiyu? In the end, where did this vixen Shiyu that young master speaks of come from? I need to have this person properly investigated. Wanting to seduce young master, I want you to properly understand not knowing shamelessness. Igniting one's dantian, naturally one would need to pay the price. Therefore, after Heshi returned to Be Courtyard, she didn't even have enough time to relocate everyone inside the secret territory before she sunk into a coma. Dan and the little golden dragon stood by Heshi's side the entire night. Neither of them dared to even move 1 foot away, and Dan cried until his eyes were red and swollen. Wu Xian used his spiritual energy to search for the condition of Heshi's injury and wrinkled his eyebrows. Heshi's injury was extremely severe. Her Dantian spiritual energy was close to being drained, but what was even more urgent was that, after losing consciousness, Heshi developed a fever. And this type of fever rendered her incapable of receiving any spiritual energy externally. Even feeding her supplementary spiritual energy didn't work. Dan lied down next to Heshi, grabbing her hand. He had cried so much his voice turned hoarse. "Mother, you clearly said that nothing would happen. You said you wouldn't abandon Dan. Woo. To the side, the little golden dragon comfortingly patted the little fellow. But he was also worried sick and couldn't say any comforting words. When they were at Jiang family's other courtyard at the eastern outskirts, he thought that Lao Da's injury wasn't too serious. Lao Da didn't show any symptoms of being an ill person. She could even cheerfully and wittily punish that old BAS. But how could he forget? Lao Da's true cultivation stage was merely meridian stage. Breaking out into high-level gold core stage would undoubtedly have a price. As the night turned a bit darker, Heshi continued to have a fever. Her face was flushed and she remained unconscious. Dan cried, and under the little golden dragon's pacifying, he fell asleep. The little golden dragon lay by the headboard, scouring his inherited memories for any means to save Heshi. Suddenly, Wu Xian's, who was standing in the doorway, expression turned cold. He quickly stood up and a flying sword appeared in his hand. But his flying sword just appeared in his hands when the grave expression on his face turned into shock. He blurted out, "Master, why did you come?" The arriving person was travel-worn and their face was haggard. Shockingly, it's Nangongyu. Nangongyu completely ignored Wu Xian. He quickly walked towards the front of the bed and softly carried her. Due to her having a fever, the girl's cheeks were flushed and her originally soft and pink lips had lost all their color and even began showing cracked lines. 1. Supplementary spiritual energy to at least get her to a more stable place in her dantian. Long eyelashes hung down, covering up a pair of cold, phoenix eyes. A faint silhouette shone on snow-white skin, causing the person to appear frail and helpless. It was completely different when compared to her ordinary craftiness, the appearance of not letting anything or person control her. Nangongyu softly let out a breath. The pair of hands that carried Heshi tightened, his heart welled up with regret and pity. "Little girl, why do you have to be so stubborn?" He lowered his head, softly murmuring, Why didn't you ask for my help? Why can't you rely on me? Am I so unworthy of your trust? He said such reprimanding words, but his tone was filled with pampering and tenderness. His slender fingers softly played with her messy hair, and his expression was that of someone who was tending to the most precious treasure. The little golden dragon who was sleeping at the head of the bed finally woke up from his dreams and loudly shouted, "For you, who let you touch Lauda's body as you wished?" The little golden dragon's yells woke up the originally unconscious Dan Dan. Dan Dan rubbed his swollen eyes, and at a glance, he saw Nangong Yu, who was carrying Heshi in his embrace. He cried out, "Beautiful Gidge, mother is injured. Quickly save her. You're so awesome, help mother wake up quicker, okay?" Woo woo woo. Nangong Yu's usual calm turned distracted now. The crying spiritual pet before him was a pink pig. Moreover, this little pig called Heshi mother but called him Beautiful Gidge. Nangong Yu's mouth twitched and turned down. Immediately, he restored his usual calm and indifferently said, "Naturally, my coming here was to come and save Sheer." After saying this, his fingers softly cut across his own wrist, and very quickly, a dark red trail of blood came out of the wound. "Master, you? How can you waste blood essence at such an important time?" Wu Xian's face was filled with anxiety. He practically wanted to run over and stop Nangong Yu. But one of Nangong Yu's cold glances stopped him from acting blindly without thinking. "Don't forget why I pushed the plan earlier." A stern voice containing gloominess was heard. "Wu Xian, I'll forgive you for this time. Next time, if Heshi retains injuries again, you don't have to return to Hell King Manor." After hearing what was said, Wu Xian turned rigid. A slight chill ran across his back, and after a while, he finally mustered up one word: yes. In fact, this time, he wanted to teach Heshi a lesson. So when Heshi had him stay in B Courtyard, he didn't follow her and merely gave a protective jade slip. During this time, although Wu Xian's person was at B Courtyard, his soul had always been paying attention to the movements of the jade slip. As long as Heshi called for help, he would immediately rush over. He thought that Heshi was merely at foundation establishment stage and that the opposite side would just have a group of martial artists at high-level meridian stage. In any case, Heshi couldn't possibly be their rival, and by that time, she would certainly cry to him for help. But how could Wu Xian think that Heshi would be able to massacre all the people and even take down a high-level gold core stage expert, all by herself? Foundation establishment stage battling a gold core stage, This completely exceeded common sense. All that was left was a profound sense of admiration and reverence. Nangong Yu coldly snorted and didn't continue speaking. Instead, he brought the wound on his wrist closer to Heshi's mouth and slowly fed it to her. The little golden dragon suspiciously looked at Nangong Yu as he snatched Dan Dan. Whispering into Dan Dan's ear, he quietly asked, "This person is green onion or garlic, ah? You let him stay by Lao Da's side? Won't have bad intentions?" Dan Dan blinked his big eyes and flattened his lips. Beautiful Gidge is a good person. He's saved Mother multiple times. Moreover, Dan Dan has seen Mother play and kiss with Beautiful Gidge. Long Long, what is benefiting at others' expense? Little golden dragon. When the pure Yin blood went into her stomach, her inflamed dantian seemed to have been given spring stream and slowly returned to its original state. Nangong Yu pressed his left hand on Heshi's back and slowly channeled his spiritual energy into her body, cautiously restoring her dantian which had been burned. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the pained expression on Heshi's face slowly disappeared, becoming peaceful. But Nangong Yu's complexion turned deathly pale. His originally tired eyes had greenish-black ash added onto them. To the side, Wu Xian was full of anxiousness. He wanted to step up and ask to substitute as the person giving Heshi spiritual energy. But he was quickly glared at by Master with his cold eyes. Nangong Yu used his hand to feel Heshi's forehead. After ensuring that she no longer had a fever, he loosened his breath and extended his hand to wipe away the perspiration on her forehead. The room turned tranquil and ambiguous. Nangong Yu tightly held onto Heshi and his line of sight never moved away, not even for a second. He wanted to stay like this forever, to have her by his side forever. But right now, he couldn't. If his matters weren't finished, then if Heshi were to stay by his side, there was a possibility that danger would happen one day. So much so that she may even die a violent death. This was something he couldn't endure, even if he died. Nan Gongyu slowly released his hands and stood up. I'm leaving, take good care of her. Furthermore, don't let Heshi know of my coming here, and you absolutely cannot let other people know either. Finished speaking, he faced the two fellows by Heshi's bedside. Did you clearly hear me? The little golden dragon and Dan Dan acted like they were awed and simultaneously nodded their heads. Their appearances were extremely lovable and cute. Nan Gongyu leaned over to leave a light kiss on Heshi's forehead before turning around to leave. But when he had just reached the doorway, he suddenly turned around. His serene eyes closely watched Dan Dan as he gloomily said, When you see me next time, you must not call me beautiful Gidge. You have to call me Daddy. Do you hear me? Heard it. Dan Dan's face was dumbfounded. Under Nan Gongyu's intense gaze, he obediently nodded his head. Wu Xian turned his head to facepalm. Master, is threatening Wang Fei's spirit pets really good when she's in a coma? If he remembered correctly, Wang Fei still hasn't agreed to marry into his house? Heshi felt that this sleep was endless. A painful and burning torture accompanied beside her in sleep. She felt as if she had been thrown into Taishang Laozi's refining pill stove like Monkey Sun was. It was scalding hot everywhere, it was painful everywhere. This sort of torment continued for a long time, but soon after, someone softly brought her into their embrace. That hug was extremely tender and doting, and even carried traces of familiarity. This allowed her body and mind to relax. Soon after, an ice-cold clear spring and bloody-smelling stream entered her throat and went into her dantian. Following this, the burning pain faded away without a trace. Even her bruised dantian was moistened by this spiritual energy blood, slowly restoring. The early morning's warm sunshine sprinkled across her snow-white and jade-like skin and stroking her soft hair. Her long eyelashes faintly trembled as Heshi slowly opened her eyes. Mother! Before she could make out everything in front of her, she felt a short and stout heavily crashing into her embrace. Soon after, she heard the child's familiar weeping. 1. Taishang Laozi's refining pill stove like Monkey Sun. This is a reference to the book Journey to the West. Taishang is a title of respect for Taoists, and Laozi was an ancient Chinese philosopher and writer. Monkey Sun is Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. He is most well known from Journey to the West, one of the 4 great classical novels of Chinese literature. Heshi is referring to the time that Sun Wukong was thrown into Laozi's refining pill stove or 8-way trigram crucible. You can read more on this here. Woo woo woo, you're finally awake, mother. Don't die, mother, don't scare Dan Dan anymore. Woo woo woo. Heshi turned her head to look around her as Dan Dan was crying in her embrace. Circling around in the air staring at her with a happy expression was the little golden dragon, who was also scolding Dan Dan. You fool, Lauda woke up, how can she still die? You're so heavy, throwing yourself onto Lauda. Not even afraid you'll squish Lauda and internally injure her. And Wu Xen, who was standing in the doorway, watching her, let out a loose breath. What surprised Heshi the most was a pale-faced little Gunyang with red eyes who laid on the bed and staring at her as big teardrops tumbled out of her big eyes. Shaoli! Heshi cried out in surprise as a smiling expression appeared on her face. You recovered? But before she could finish asking the question, the little Gunyang let out a big cry and, following Dan Dan, also threw herself onto Heshi. Miss, I'm sorry. It's all because I'm no good, it's because I'm useless. I hurt wet Nurse Chin and caused Miss to receive injuries and fall into a coma, woo woo woo. By the time it was early morning, Shaoli had already woken up. Under the treatment of the spiritual spring water and nectar from the 1,000-leaf flower, she was already almost completely healed. She could even change back into human form. But after she woke up, she discovered that Heshi wasted a great amount of spiritual qi in order to save her. Not only that, she also concluded a life and death contract with her. She even received injuries in order to revenge her. After the little fox found out about this, she was incessantly worried and blamed herself. She didn't once stop crying. After Hushi woke up and she heard her soft voice, she couldn't bear the sadness and fright she felt over these few days and began to wail. Heshi was made speechless when she saw their appearances when they were afraid she would die, but she also felt touched. She turned around on the bed and slowly circulated her spiritual energy, then she let out a pleasant smile. Very strange, apparently the aftermath of my ignited Dantian isn't as serious as I thought it was. I feel that my Dantian spiritual force is abundant right now and the spiritual chi in my meridians aren't clogged at all. Apparently, my cultivation level even raised a little. Speaking up to here, Hushi carried the plump Dan Dan in her embrace and pinched his pink cheeks. Laughing, she teased, "Okay, little crying bag. Look, nothing is wrong with mother. Don't look like the sky is falling down." Dan Dan flattened his mouth and stammered, "It wasn't originally like this. Yesterday evening, mother was scalding hot and no matter how loud it was, you didn't wake up. No matter what we did to try and give you spiritual energy, it was no use." Dan Dan was truly really scared that mother would die. If it weren't for after, Dan Dan's words were half said when Wu Exin, who was standing to the side, lightly kuged and walked forward. "Wang Fei, the servants inside your courtyard have already been waiting outside for a long time. Because you were not awake, they did not dare to act on their own initiative and deal with the corpses. May I ask whether or not you wish to go outside right now and explain it to them?" Heshi hadn't even said anything, but Wu Xian's words caused Dan Dan's complexion to change and he quickly shut his mouth. Hushi wrinkled her eyebrow and suspiciously casted a glance at Wu Exin, then looked at Dan Dan again. "Dan Dan, what were you just saying if it weren't for after what?" "Nothing. Nothing." Dan Dan's small head shook like a rattle. Dan Dan never said after. Hushi looked towards the little golden dragon, whose face conveyed a "I don't understand what you're talking about" expression. "Mysterious and secretive, what are you up to?" Hushi muttered, no longer trying to understand these few fellows, and walked out of the room. Chapter 408 Heavenly Paradise. When Shi Jia and the others saw that Heshi was healed, they all seemed to become better at the same time as well. Then, they suddenly ran up in front of Heshi and kneeled down on the floor with a plop sound. "Miss, you're okay, you're okay? Really is too great." Clearly they were a group of rough men, but now each and every one of them was crying. Some were even sobbing, repeatedly saying "Miss." It really caused Heshi to not know whether to laugh or cry. Shi Jia wiped away his tears and he said, with his voice choked with emotion, "Miss, may I ask, where should we bury wet Nurse Chen's body? Do you need me to create a burial mound for her behind B Courtyard's mountain?" When he mentioned wet Nurse Chen, Hushi's eyes dimmed a little and a thread filled with heavy sorrow streaked through her eyes. She was silent for a long time before softly saying, "No need to, this B Courtyard isn't safe anymore. Soon we'll have to change our place. Regarding wet Nurse Chen and the others' bodies, use spiritual jade to preserve them. We will send them to an earthly paradise to be buried." After confirming her own body was all right, Hushi didn't pause and began to arrange a follow-up plan. It was very clear that Nayland family's B Courtyard is no longer safe. Heshi had too many treasures that others coveted, but her strength was too weak. She had no means to display these treasures' former might. If it was just herself, she wouldn't be afraid of anyone coming over to plunder and long for her treasures. But when thinking of wet Nurse Chen's death and Xiao Li's skinned appearance, lingering fear bubbled forth in Heshi's heart. Ordinary people were innocent, treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. She could protect Xiao Li, Shi Jia, and the others for a short period of time, but not for a lifetime. Rather than constantly worrying about their safety, it would be better to think of ways to increase their strength, so that they would be able to defend themselves. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. And the best location to promote and protect Shi Jia and the others was naturally sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory. Before leaving, Heshi had people return this B Courtyard left by Nayland Manor to its former state. She prepared to go outside to purchase some little servant girls and manservants to clean the courtyard. After all, this was the place that Nayland Heshi and wet nurse Chen had lived in for over 10 years, leaving behind many irremovable marks. What's more, if people from Nayland Manor decided to visit one day, this was a good way to pull the wool over their eyes. After leaving, Heshi quickly took out a light dress and entered Song Mountain with everyone in tow. The band sent bursts of bright light, and in the blink of an eye, everyone appeared in a dark green grassland. There weren't any pavilions or kiosks here. But there were dark blue lakes, seas of flowers, and green spiritual plants. The sky was dark blue and the spiritual energy in the air was plentiful. There were also the clear sounds of songbirds and insects coming from far away. This let everything be filled with picturesque charm. The three fellows, Dan, the little golden dragon, and Shaoli, had long ago stopped controlling themselves. They ran into the cluster of flowers to roll around and play. Even the purple abyss vine was unwilling to lose out. Its purple vines danced about as it ran towards the three fellows to play. One could hear their bursts of laughter, and for no apparent reason, their hearts would feel lighter and brighter. But everyone who entered this heavenly paradise, aside from Heshi and those several simple-minded spiritual pets, who would still have the mind to be lively and play, they all had their eyes wide open and didn't dare believe everything they saw. Zhang Seno. Now he had already changed his name to Shisan. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.